liberties in this country.
Always controversial. Labour Shadow Culture Secretary, she says the patriotic anthem Rule Britannia alienates many Britons. Is it outdated or does it fill you with pride?
That is a good show, I have to say. There's a lot to get our teeth into this morning, and there's loads of other items we haven't even told you about yet. Now, don't forget, if you want to join Nigel Farage and Michelle Dewberry, tomorrow evening we've got a budget special in Whitehaven, up in Cumbria, that neck of the woods. Scan the QR code on the screen, and you could join them to take part in the show. There it is. Get your phone out or go onto gbnews.com and apply to be there as well. I'm going to be there. It's a working men's club. I'm going for a pint and play a game of darts.
And some pork scratchings?
Yeah.
Salt and vinegar crisps?
I do quite like a pork scratching.
There we are. Very good.
Right, let us know your thoughts this morning. GB Views at gbnews.com. First, though, the very latest news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The NHS could be facing real-term funding cuts of £2 billion as the Chancellor comes under pressure ahead of tomorrow's budget. Analysis by the Institute for Fiscal Studies suggests the health service could suffer a 1.2% cut in day-to-day spending across England, which would be the largest reduction since the 1970s. It could mean the struggling health service is forced to cut staffing, pay or services for patients, despite rising costs following a promise to tackle waiting lists. The Rwanda bill suffered another series of defeats in the House of Lords last night, in many cases by unusually large margins of more than 100 votes. Peers backed 5 changes to the government's flagship immigration bill, including an assurance that the safety of Rwanda can be challenged in the courts. Nearly 50 amendments were put forward, with more to be voted on today. However, the scale of last night's defeat raises the chances of a drawn-out tussle between the Lords and the Commons. A woman's been arrested on suspicion of murder after a 10-year-old girl was found dead in the West Midlands. Police said they found the child with injuries at an address in Sandwell yesterday afternoon. She was confirmed dead at the scene. The 33-year-old woman's understood to be known to the girl, and she's been arrested and taken into custody. And in the United States, Donald Trump won a caucus vote in North Dakota last night, further strengthening his grip on the Republican Party. The former president's predicted to dominate more contests tonight as the US prepares for what's known as Super Tuesday, which sees 15 states and 1 territory hold simultaneous votes. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Have you just plugged your laptop in?
I had to plug it in.
We see we don't have anyone to do that round here. We're very self-sufficient. Welcome to Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. And breathe.
Yeah. So we have 2 big royal stories in town today. Kate Middleton, we've not seen her since Christmas Day, the Princess of Wales. We know she's had major surgery, abdominal surgery. She was in hospital for 2 weeks, and we're expecting to see her after Easter. But at TMZ, it's a PAP agency, has published a photograph of her in the car with her mother, probably on the school run.
Well, we think it's her.
Well, it is her.
Doesn't look like it. It looks like Pippa. For me, it looks a lot like Pippa Middleton. We have absolutely no clarification as to whether it is her. But anyway, we'd love to know what you think. But first of all, we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Cameron's waiting to talk to us. Her uncle entered the celebrity Big Brother house last night. Have a look.
Gary Goldsmith, the uncle to the future Queen of our country, Catherine Middleton, the current Princess of Wales. She is simply perfect. First time I met William, Catherine was cooking and William said, "Hi, do you want a cup of tea?" Very normal. I often read that people think I'm a bit of a bad boy. It'd be lovely to put the record straight, but winding people up is probably my favourite hobby. Every part of me is just riddled with mischief and danger.
He is a bit of a bad boy, Cameron Walker, because he's got a conviction for punching his wife in the street, and then there was an incident with cocaine and, is it a call girl?
Yes, a sex worker in Ibiza.
Sex worker in Ibiza. So he's quite a colourful character. And he says he loves his family and he would do nothing to embarrass them. His mere presence in the Big Brother house is embarrassing.
Yeah, I don't think that clip you just showed, I don't think could be any further from the perception of the British royal family if you tried.
Yeah.
And the fact that he is not only the uncle of the future Queen, he's the great uncle of the future King, Prince George, as well, I think is going to perhaps, whether he wants to or not, is going to create some alarm bells and perhaps embarrass the royal family a little bit.
But you know what? I think it's very humanising because Kate is not royal blood and everybody's got someone in their family who's a bit of a liability on Christmas Day. That's this guy, right? I don't think it's a problem for them at all. And when he said the first time he met Prince William, he said, "Do you want a cup of tea?" I like that. They're normal, even though they are, of course, different.
Yeah, and Prince William and Catherine both stayed in his Ibiza villa back in 2006, so they have obviously met a number of times. And I think what was telling was that he was so... in the interview he's done with The Sun this morning, he was so praising the Princess of Wales, saying she's beautiful on the outside as well as the inside. But also what he was doing was really having a go at Harry and Meghan, saying that Harry threw Kate, his niece, under a bus. He also said that it was absolute rubbish what was written in Endgame about the allegations that Kate is a racist in the Dutch version of the book. So, yeah, it was quite a scathing attack on Harry and Meghan and singing the praises of the Princess of Wales.
One of the papers suggested that he got a severe dressing down from his sister.
Yeah.
The Princess of Wales' mum, Kate Middleton. What's she called, mother?
Carol
Middleton, of course. She's an older sister, isn't she?
Yeah, she is.
So big sister says, you don't embarrass us. But as I say, I disagree with Bev. Just the fact he's in there is embarrassing, because this is going worldwide.
Well, because the Middleton family, ever since Kate started courting William, have remained incredibly private. And they've been really respectful of the royal family and not going on TV shows and doing massive interviews. Apart from what has been described as the black sheep of the Middleton family, which is Gary Goldsmith. He's going into the Big Brother house. He was very successful in his own right. He ran a £30 million company, but of course he's now going into the Big Brother house. And the question, I think, for Kensington Palace and for the Princess is, what on earth is he going to say? And what does he know about the Princess of Wales'
Well, he won't know anything about her illness, will he?
I hope not.
No, they won't have confided in him.
Because he's being filmed for 24 hours a day with cameras on him. It's very easy to forget... Exactly. It's very easy to forget that you're being recorded.
If she's dealing with something that has been a long-term health condition that she might have had from being much younger, then he might know about it. I don't know where... I mean, I don't think it will be damaging for them, and I think that the Princess of Wales is literally the goose that lays the golden eggs for the royal family. She is the precious jewel in that crown of that family, isn't she? She can do no wrong. I don't think he has the power to damage her in any way. There's nothing he could say that would damage her. I don't know how he can sleep at night. I mean, the humiliation of being there just because you happen to be a relative of the royal family. That's a kind of a bit shameless, isn't it?
Because this is a celebrity, Big Brother, and he's not a celebrity.
No, he's alongside former X Factor judge Louis Walsh and Sharon Osbourne and all the rest of them.
Some of them in there I've never heard of either.
No.
So we've got this picture, which I know that I realise I might be the exception to the rule here, but everybody is saying that this is Kate Middleton in the car. We can't show you the picture, which in itself is an interesting angle. We have no evidence that it's her. We are just all jumping on the idea that it is her. It looks a lot like Pippa Middleton to me.
So we're not showing the paparazzi photograph for obvious reasons. It is a very intrusive photograph. Kensington Palace, I'm getting the indication, no one's saying anything on the record, but I'm getting the indication they're very upset about this picture. Clearly, it's been published in the US tabloids magazine. It was taken just after 9 o'clock, apparently, on the way back from the school run with Carol and Kate in the car very near Windsor. As you said, she's wearing dark sunglasses. Although it was a very intrusive photograph, what it has done is kind of quelled some of the speculation we've seen online over the last few weeks. There's been lots of very unfounded conspiracy theories, which I'm not going to get into, but it has shown that a lot of those conspiracy theories are clearly complete rubbish.
Because she looks, as far as we can see, she looks OK.
Yeah.
You say it's intrusive as well, but look, it was in a public place, Cameron. On a public highway, and there never used to be a law banning people from taking photographs of people on a public highway. So, I mean, the restraint here is, in my view, because the media has decided she is recovering from an illness. It's clearly serious if she's been in hospital for 2 weeks. We're not going to see her till after Easter. But I don't think there'd be any breach of any regulations if they were to publish, because it was in a public place.
Yeah, I think it's out of respect for the Princess of Wales, and I think ever since the death of Diana, Princess of Wales in '97, the British media in particular have been very careful about publishing paparazzi photographs.
We don't use paparazzi photos.
No,
well, that's
but the US does,
yeah, they do.
and social media does.
Yeah.
And the problem is, anyone in the country can see these pictures online, and the palace cannot stop or control those pictures circulating online. So the fact that we're not publishing them, realistically, won't make a difference. Perhaps with the older generation, yes, but with the younger generation, they're going to see it anyway.
She's an accomplished photographer in her own right. She's taken lots of photographs of the children and the family. Would it not have been perhaps, could the palace not perhaps have seen a way where she could have taken a photograph of herself with the kids and released it? And there'd have been no need for any of this now.
I think this shows the difference between Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace, because the King has been allowed to be filmed. He's had photographs of him taken with looking at greetings cards, etc. Kensington Palace remained incredibly silent. Now, the King, of course, is head of state, so there is a much more warranted public interest in his health conditions. The Princess of Wales has a much bigger right to privacy than him. And to be fair, it's up to her. If she wants to do it, then she does. If she doesn't, she doesn't.
And if she's going to take it, she's got to put all her makeup on, and perhaps she just doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, maybe.
She's got 3 kids to look after too.
It's remarkable, actually, how different that relationship is. We've got to move on, Cameron. I think you'll be back. I know there's so much we could talk about
so much.
today.
We could do it all day.
But we will be talking about this also as the show goes on. I want to hear your thoughts as well. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Now, George Galloway from the Workers' Party of Britain, well, he was sworn in as the MP for Rochdale yesterday. He swore his vow to God. I wasn't sure if he would, actually. Let's hear what he said after he left the Commons in an impromptu press conference.
So that's what I'm predicting here. The next election will be about Muslims and will be about the taking away of civil liberties in this country. It's Sunak's last hope. I pray for the social peace of our country that it's a forlorn hope.
He's slippery, isn't he? Just when you think you've got the measure of George Galloway, he says something that slightly catches you off guard. We're going to talk now to our political editor,
Yeah, he says it's all about Muslims.
Well, this is the thing, Chris. He says it's about civil liberties, and my ears prick up, and I say, OK, this is interesting. That's something that I'm very interested in. And then he says it's about Muslims, and then I think, well, I'm not sure how that affects me personally, and I'm not sure how well we know the percentage of the British electorate that might be Muslim who might want to vote for him and his party. He's so slippery, isn't he? He's already causing confusion, let's say.
Yeah, morning both. He wouldn't say he was slippery. I mean, he actually arranged that press conference. We had an op note sent to us in journalist terms about an hour and a half early. So he knew we were all there. He knew the microphones were there. His wife was behind him with nails painted with a Palestinian flag. He clearly thinks that the next election is about religion, about Muslims. He said that. He said the next election will be about Muslims. He thinks that people's faith will be a big voting factor, maybe for the first time that we can remember in a general election in this country. If the war in Gaza carries on, it could well be that becomes a defining thing to vote about. He certainly said that he thought that independent candidates like himself will take millions of votes away from the main parties. He singled out Angela Rayner, very interestingly. He said that we will stand, the Workers' Party, or will support an independent party, he said, a candidate against Angela Rayner in Ashton-under-Lyne. Now, her majority there is just 4,263, down from over 11,000 in 2019. He thinks that he can put one across some Labour senior figures in the same way maybe the Reform Party might chip into Tory MP numbers at the election. So he is going to cause some issues, I think, more for the Labour Party than the Tory Party, and that's certainly something to worry about for Rishi Sunak.
In a sense, Chris, he's becoming to Labour what Reform UK is to the Tory party. Reform has the Reform Party is going to do well, I think, with disaffected Tory voters, and the Galloway is making no bones about it. He's after Labour seats where there's a strong Muslim population.
Yes, I was saying as much on an online piece for our website last Friday. That's exactly right, I think. And even if there is a ceasefire, but the hopes there might be a ceasefire during Ramadan in Gaza, that the legacy or even if the fighting is carrying on, it'll be very difficult for some Muslim people to support Labour if Labour aren't calling for an immediate ceasefire, and that will carry on into the autumn when we expect the election to be. I was standing right in front of him. I mean, he is a character, Bev. You're totally right. He wears that fedora because he was attacked in 2014. And he said he got badly damaged to his head, so he wears the hat for medical reasons. His eyes flitted about. He was a press conference for about 35-40 minutes. He called out the BBC. He had a dig at GBNews. He likes to put it back on the journalists. I mean, he's a fighter. He said he'll be speaking at PMQs if he gets called, and the budget debate. And if he's not called at either of those points by the Speaker, he'll do a maiden speech, Andrew and Bev, which will be a big one.
And Chris, you and I know that maiden speeches by tradition are gentle, they're uncontroversial, it's a romp through the constituency and a tribute to the predecessor. He's going to do none of that. He's going to blast Labour on both barrels about Gaza.
Labour and Rishi Sunak, he said that Sunak, in his speech on the steps of Downing Street last Friday, was using the Gaza war, the Muslim population voting for Galloway, as a wedge issue. So he'll have a go at both the Tories and Labour when that speech happens. He did make reference to some local issues yesterday. He said he wants to save Rochdale Football Club and make sure that Rochdale has a Rochdale postcode. Currently its postcode is Oldham.
OK, all right, thank you, Christopher. Well, it's certainly made politics a little bit more interesting, hasn't it?
Whatever you think of Jack Galloway, and I've known him for a very long time, it is never dull.
No.
It is never dull. And he is a brilliant speaker.
Yeah, he is.
You may not agree with the word he says, and I'll never forget when he was before those senators, when they were talking about sanctions busting over Iraq, and he turned the tables on all of them.
Yeah, he did.
They didn't know what hit him.
He was very impressive during the Iraq War. Right, after the break, we're going to be talking about Red Bull F1 chief Christian Horner. He's got into all sorts of troubles with his wife, Jerry Halliwell, but she stood by his side at the Grand Prix at the weekend. Whatever happened
She fawned by his
to
side.
girl power, Jerry? What happened to girl power? This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Sadiq Khan, 6.3 million on a virtue signal, loading lines. Why is he spending the people's money in this way? And why is nobody saying anything? I want to hear from Suzanne Hall, the potential Conservative candidate, or Howard Cox, the potential Reform candidate who could potentially take this off Sadiq Khan. Why are they not speaking? This is ridiculous.
Well, it was sprung on everybody. Did you know about that?
I didn't know about it.
Nobody knows. So they're spending this money. They're spending £6.3 million, and no one knew about it. Where's the press? Where are the public consultations? No one knew. I think it's a good idea to rename the train lines, because all these train lines are there are like 4 of them, 6 of them, whatever, and they're all going all these different directions. And you tell someone to come, and you don't even know the name.
Yeah, but 6.3 million. Listen, if you want to give me 6.3 million to come up with some virtue signalling lines, I'd like to know which advertising agency he employed to do this, how long it took him, and why he's even done it in the first place. Why has he done this?
He has done this with the virtue signalling because he's part of T-World. He's Rishi Sunak. It's this whole concept is every inclusiveness. There is no country. Nobody's English. Our own history is bad. Not my history, but whatever. The English history is bad. And it's a denial of history. It's Orwellian or something. Yeah. Not that I know
I think it's an absolute absurdity that Sadiq Khan should be doing that. He's got a knife crime epidemic, a crime epidemic, people stealing watches off people walking down the street. Yes. You've got the burglary as an all-time high. London, a lot of people are put off by it. And this is what he spent £6.3 million on.
This could have been a bit
to speak as to why.
But he doesn't need to speak. People need to speak out and say, well, why didn't we know about this? But the idea, can I say something to you, Nana? The idea is right. It's like, for example, take the Northern Line. You know, there are 6 Northern Lines.
6 Northern Lines.
6 different Northern Lines, maybe more now, because one goes from Mill Hill East to Mill Hill.
This was the Overground he was...
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, the latest in the Christian Horner-Jerry Halliwell saga continues as a female colleague is allegedly still in contact with the Red Bull Formula One chief.
So his, Christian Horner's career and marriage to Spice Girl Ginger Spice is under threat after this colleague made her allegations. Joining us now is Paul Coyte. Now, this looked, Paul, last week like this might be one of those stories. It rumbled on. Christian Horner was accused of impropriety with a female colleague.
Correct.
He was cleared.
Yep.
We thought it might all go away. And then what happened?
It's never going to go away, because the thing is, it's a bigger story, and I believe that there's more to this. There's a power struggle that's going on here. This all goes back. With Jos Verstappen, there's Helmut Marko, who's an 80-year-old man who is the motorsport advisor for Red Bull. So there's him, and then there's Christian Horner. Now, there was the original founder of Red Bull, who died a couple of years ago, who was the great basically advocate, I think, towards Christian Horner. And when he's gone, that's left him open. Now, this story is broken, and there's always people that are going to be wanted to take over. And honestly, there's a film in this. It's just...
And does Max Verstappen, who is the champion of the world,
yes,
who won the first race, his dad is the one leading the charge to get rid of Christian Horner.
He was a driver himself.
Does he want to take over himself?
Well, this is the interesting thing. Does he want more of this, or is it because he's seeing that Christian Horner's getting in the way? Now, the other really interesting thing about this is that Jos Verstappen was seen...
Former driver, current father of the Max Verstappen.
Of Max Verstappen, was seen speaking to Toto Wolff. Now, Toto Wolff is the man who's in charge of Mercedes.
Right.
Now, you think, well, they're friends, but is there more to it than that? And maybe he wanted to be seen, because Lewis Hamilton is leaving Mercedes to go to Ferrari, which leaves an empty seat with Mercedes. So therefore, is it likely that he could say, well, it's us or them?
And Jos Verstappen could just then use this as an excuse to want to go, I don't want to be involved in a team which is mired in such scandal, and he could then use this as an excuse to leave.
He could do. And also, as far as Marko is concerned, there's a deal with Helmut Marko that if he leaves, then Verstappen can go. That's written into the contract.
What I don't understand, there's a long inquiry which clears Horner of any impropriety, and then hundreds of texts and WhatsApp messages are mysteriously leaked, which shows he was engaged in inappropriate language with this young woman, and still Jerry Halliwell stands by her man. What was that? What was the name of that woman who said stinks?
Tammy Wynette.
Tammy Wynette, complete in a white dress, kissing him in public. What
do you do, though? What do you do? I mean,
you don't go anywhere near her.
Exactly what I would have done.
Would you? What straight away in public? You don't even know exactly what you'd be straight up there.
Have you seen the WhatsApp messages? I actually, again, like everything, they're all available online. So, of course, I went through them and I put myself in her shoes and I thought, if I was the wife and he was sending these messages, there was no confirmation that anything physical had happened between these two human beings. However, did it cross the line? Was it inappropriate? Yes. Was there a sense that if she had gone round to his hotel room and, might he have engaged in something extramarital? Yes, one might say, speculate. But the fact that she then came out, I mean, Jerry Halliwell, the woman who was all about girl power, holding his hand on the grid, no, I'd have been like, slick
it
off.
looks uncomfortable.
It was awful.
It really did look uncomfortable.
And also, she fell for it, the PR stunt. I mean, she should have stayed at home with the kids, frankly.
And well, there's the PR stunt, and then it's like, well, you're damned if you do, if you're damned if you don't, because then she's at home. It's like, well, where is she? What's going to go on? Where are you going to do it?
I know, and we have to go. Right, we're going to be following this up in just a minute. Don't go anywhere. Britain's Newsroom, GB News.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Met Office forecast for GB News. A bright start to the day for many of us, and we'll see plenty of sunny spells through the day, except for the Far East, where it will stay cloudy with some showery rain. In fact, it is a grey and damp start for eastern England and eastern Scotland. Those outbreaks of rain will continue into the afternoon, but they'll edge increasingly into the North Sea, with brighter skies developing, certainly for parts of northern England. Some showery rain pushing through Northern Ireland into western Scotland later, 1 or 2 showers elsewhere, but actually across central and western parts, that's where the best of any sunny spells will be, and temperatures will reach 11, 12, perhaps 13 Celsius. Feeling pleasant in the south in the spring sunshine, colder further north and northeast. Into the evening, we'll see those clear skies become extensive across Northern Ireland, West Scotland, Wales, western and southwestern England, and as a result, frost will form in many places. A chilly start to Wednesday, but cloudier conditions will prevail in the east, and further showers will edge back in from the North Sea into parts of eastern Scotland and eastern England. So some rain about first thing tomorrow. Otherwise, plenty of sunshine for western Scotland, western England and Wales, as well as Northern Ireland. Clouding over for Northern Ireland later, brisk breeze here. Otherwise, plenty of fine weather in the west, 1 or 2 showers in the far southwest. And the cloudiest skies will remain in the east, where it will feel a bit colder with a wind from the North Sea, milder further west.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Up next, Rishi Sunak suffered 5 defeats in the House of Lords last night over his bill to rescue the stalled Rwanda plan. Will it ever come to become a law? We're going to be joined by the Tory peer, Lord Colville Ranger. That's next.
We have a ton of top prizes to be won in our spring giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text prize to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
People in this field and they talk about mental health assistance. And I know from personal experience within my own family circle that the help is just not there.
I know that with speaking to many families who've got autistic children and adults. They are really struggling at the moment, whether it's to do with education, getting a diagnosis. You know, once they get to 18 to 25, where's the help? There isn't the help there with social care. You know, I just set up a petition as well, who's going to look after my sons when I'm no longer around? Because that's what that's the story and the question that's at the back of every parent's mind. It's just so hard at the moment, and lots of small charities are closing. And for me, they're the backbone of the society, because they're the ones that speak, you know, to parents continually all the time, or autistic adults. So,
and why has it to be that way? And you know, we'll get government minister after government minister coming on and saying, we have greatly added to the resource here. We've had another 2.5 people we've hired last year, and whatever. They twist statistics and they make it all sound good. But I know from the work I do in the charitable world, and I know from people who I know personally, it just isn't there. So stop telling it is. And the thing is, the demand for mental health care has just ballooned.
The earlier you start working with children who are autistic, the better the outcomes. I've seen it myself, and I know it with my own sons. I shouldn't have had to set up a school and remortgage my home, you know, for my boys. And so many parents are still struggling, like 20-odd years from when my boys were diagnosed, and they're saying it's improving, and we're talking about awareness, we're talking about acceptance. It's hard because I'm juggling caring, I'm juggling, you know, taking him to college, picking him up. You know, I'm running a charity, I'm doing events. I know I'm a workaholic, but I'm very passionate and I'm very driven.
10 a.m. on Tuesday the 5th of March. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce.
Princess of Wales has been spotted for the first time since her abdominal surgery. She was with her mum, Carol Middleton, but we can't show you the photo. Do you think it's in the public interest that we don't?
Goldsmith, the uncle to the future Queen of our country, Catherine Middleton, the current Princess of Wales. She is.
So this is Celebrity Big Brother. It kicked off last night, and that voice is the uncle of the Princess of Wales, Gary Goldsmith. He's in the Big Brother house. Did he spill any royal secrets? We will let you know.
George Galloway was sworn in as an MP yesterday, declaring he's going to overturn Labour Deputy Leader Angela Rayner's majority in Ashton-under-Lyne. She has a majority of just 4,000. The Workers' Party of Britain leader also said this about the upcoming general election.
That's what I'm predicting here. The next election will be about Muslims and will be about the taking away of civil liberties in this country.
Well, some vicars are furious after the Church of England looks set to pay £1 billion for slavery reparations. Yes, you did hear that correctly. Just an unbelievable amount of money.
Well, I don't know where I think they're going to get the money from.
Yeah.
400 churches have closed down in the last decade.
It's extraordinary. Listen, we've also got to let you know about tomorrow's big day. It's the budget day tomorrow. We're going to be in Whitehaven. I'm going to be in Whitehaven in the morning. Andrew's going to be in the studio in Westminster. Happy to get rid of me for a day, aren't you? And
only a day.
Michelle and Nigel will be doing their shows from Whitehaven tomorrow evening. If you'd like to be there, please go on to gbnews.com, and when the QR code comes up on your screen, you can also scan that with your phone camera and be there. We'd love to see you. Let us know your thoughts on all of our talking points this morning. GBviews at gbnews.com. First, the very latest news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Bev, thank you and good morning. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The NHS could be facing real-term funding cuts of £2 billion as the Chancellor comes under pressure ahead of tomorrow's budget. Analysis by the Institute for Fiscal Studies suggests the health service could suffer a 1.2% cut in day-to-day spending across England, which would be the largest reduction since the 1970s. It could mean the health service is forced to cut staffing or pay despite rising costs and a promise to tackle waiting lists. The warning comes after Jeremy Hunt suggested that a more efficient public sector could give the government greater scope for tax cuts. Business Minister Greg Hands told GB News the government is being responsible.
The government intervened well and correctly over recent years, for example, during the pandemic, in terms of the supporting people to remain in employment, the fact that government paid a big part of people's energy bills over the last couple of winters. I think people support that. That is why there's been an increase in public spending. But, as I said earlier, the economy is now turning a corner, and that then sets us up nicely to be able to afford things like tax cuts.
But Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth says the budget won't be enough and it's time for an election.
It's why I think now, after 14 years of the Conservatives, it really is time for change. But I think that opportunity for change is coming, because I think there's going to be a May general election. Lots of gossip swirling around in this place about a May general election. And I think Rishi Sunak, and this is my demand for Rishi Sunak, I'm sure he's watching GB News this morning, my demand to Rishi Sunak is name the date.
Anticipation is building ahead of the Chancellor's budget, with experts suggesting that any cuts to courts, police or local authorities may not be realistic. Well, we asked local residents in Glasgow and in East Yorkshire what they want to see in the budget.
I'd like to see them listen to the people as well for a change. They seem to give all these promises and never keep them.
It'd be nice for the petrol to go down and stop putting money on council tax and stuff like that. People can't afford it.
Businesses are struggling at the moment, the market's struggling, so I think they just need a little bit of a more stable background in the economy.
Raise your tax allowance, because now some pensioners are going to find themselves in a tax bracket.
The Rwanda bill suffered another series of defeats in the House of Lords last night, in many cases by unusually large margins of more than 100 votes. Peers backed 5 changes to the government's flagship immigration bill, including an assurance that the safety of Rwanda can be challenged in the courts. Nearly 50 amendments were put forward, with more to be voted on today. However, the scale of last night's defeat raises the chances of a drawn-out tussle between the Lords and the Commons. Meanwhile, a record 385 migrants crossed the English Channel yesterday, the highest number on a single day this year. GB News understands a 7th small boat crossed into British waters last night, carrying 49 migrants. That's after 6 other boats carrying 336 people were intercepted by the Border Force earlier yesterday. A woman's been arrested on suspicion of murder after a 10-year-old girl was found dead in the West Midlands. Police said they found the child with injuries at an address in Sandwell yesterday afternoon. She was confirmed dead at the scene. A 33-year-old woman understood to be known to the girl has been arrested and taken into custody. And to the United States, where Donald Trump won a caucus vote in the North Dakota last night, further strengthening his grip on the Republican Party. The former president's predicted to dominate more contests tonight as the US prepares for what's known as Super Tuesday, which sees 15 states and 1 territory hold simultaneous votes. A rematch between President Biden and Mr. Trump is looking more likely. However, his various legal troubles may cause some complications as he faces 91 felony charges across 4 states. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
10:06, you're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So if you want to join Nigel Farage and Michelle Dewberry, and me actually, I'll be in the bar tomorrow night in Whitehaven. I'm not just going for the drinks, I am doing the show from there tomorrow. Scan the QR code on the screen now, and you could join us all in Whitehaven tomorrow evening and get on the show and get your thoughts about the budget out to the nation. Now, still to come, should we scrap Rule Britannia from the Proms? A top Labour MP says the patriotic anthem is alienating. Does she have a point? Is it woke nonsense? Don't miss that.
The first joining us now in the studio is the former advisor to Boris Johnson and the Tory peer, Colville Ranger, Lord Ranger. Colville, big moment in the Lords last night. 5 different defeats on the Rwanda bill. The Archbishop of Canterbury abandoning his flock again in the House of Lords, in the thick of the political battle. Is that the right place for the Archbishop of Canterbury to be?
Well, he seems to think it is, and I do have some concerns, as we've all had, about, and I'm rather new to the House of Lords, about the role of the Church in the House of Lords. But he's making a moral point. That's what he's allowed to do. But this is a hugely political issue. So you do have to question the Church's role in politics. Yeah. But we understand, look, it's a contentious issue. Obviously, I have been supporting the government in what we're trying to do. We're trying to break this terrible trade. We're trying to put a disincentive in place. We're trying to do the right thing here for people. We don't want to see more children, women, men drowning in the English Channel. That's what we have to keep our eyes on exactly what it is we're trying to do. And Rwanda is part of that overall puzzle that we're trying to solve. So I think that the razor-like focus that certain people have on just the Rwanda issue doesn't look at the overall issue we're trying to break, the evil of the gangs, the evil of death that is caused by them. And that's where I would like to see the Church taking a view and saying, how do we destroy this evil? Give us some other alternatives of it.
He just thinks the Rwanda plan is wicked, full stop. Just wants he'd write the whole thing scrapped. Because he doesn't think Rwanda's
I won't speak for the Archbishop, but it feels like it's not just the policy, yes, it's the plan, it's the whole policy.
Yeah.
Whereas others are taking a view that there are elements of the policy, and hence now with the treaty, this is obviously, currently we're debating the treaty that is coming through and whether that enables us to, the government, to answer the questions that the High Court placed on whether Rwanda is safe. Now, I sort of Googled, is Rwanda safe on the way here? And you've got a whole mixture of different results. You've got, Tourism is booming in Rwanda. I've had a number of colleagues, actually, parliamentary colleagues, have been there recently on trips to assess. They've come back speaking in glowing terms.
It's on the Arsenal Football Club.
It's on the Arsenal arm. Visit Rwanda has been there for several years.
Yeah.
You know, I don't speak of that club because they're not I support the other North London team, Tottenham. But yes, so we are absolutely... And what criteria are we establishing for safety? Because if we go to a microscopic level, which is in some ways, some people are going, then there isn't a country in the world that will say is safe. So there is a sense of the politics, the criteria, the moral obligation. But again, I come back to the evil that we're trying to stop, the things that we're trying to actually not allow happen. It should be the bigger picture.
Again, we talk about this a lot. It's the election year, we think. And if they don't get these planes off the ground, Colville, it does look like a government that can't get anything done. If you do get them off the ground, would it be enough to convince people to vote Conservative? I think tomorrow's budget and how people feel about the money in their pocket is more important to them.
I think you're right, Bev. I think you are right. However, it is a sense of you want a government to be able to do what it says it's going to do. So whether people fully care about the planes taking off or not, on most people's day-to-day lives, it may not be the number one priority. It'll be, can I afford the things I need to afford? Food, electricity, the cost of living. And you're right, the budget will play a bigger part there. So the Chancellor has a huge opportunity tomorrow. The Conservative Party will be looking for some rabbits out of the hat.
Why do I have this terrible sinking feeling that he's not going to have any?
Oh, they will be.
I'm sure that, I'm with Andrew.
Because where the two issues meld, of course, is where people look at their pay packet at the end of the month and they go, I cannot believe how much I've paid in tax. And then they know they're paying £15 million a day to keep illegal migrants in hotels.
Yes.
That's where those two issues coalesce.
Yes.
And so unless there are some significant tax cuts and people feel more wealthy, it's not going to work.
You're right, Bev. So you're right, Andrew. There'll be some rabbits. But the question is, will they be significant enough? Will we feel that? And we're getting so close to the next election. Can that come through? Well, it's going to be some point this year. The Prime Minister has said that.
Convinced it's January. I think she's
Not convinced. I don't know. I did speak to an MP who said he thought he might go to January.
I think January would be very difficult for so many reasons, practical reasons
Even
as well.
just on a weather point of view, I think January is a mistake. You want people to leave the house.
Yes.
But I don't think it's going to be anywhere near this side of the year.
There is talk of May.
Yeah.
There is talk of May. Obviously, we have the local elections across the country and the metro mayors. Which will be difficult for the Conservatives, no doubt. Local elections aren't easy when you're the party of government, let alone where we are currently. And then there's a question of what will improve for the government over a summer where it gives room for more rumours, more attacks from the Labour Party, Labour to set out its stall. Can the economy grow? Well,
because they're playing such a straight bat.
They are, and that's what the good opposition does.
If you don't do anything, it's difficult to mess up.
It is. And really, it's up to the government to improve things. Can they improve the economy? Can they improve the situation around it? Can they get waiting lists down? Can all these things... Can they stop more boats coming in? And the summer is peak time for boats.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's a lot of headwinds, as they say, politically for the government.
Also, there is talk that inflation could fall below the government's 2% target by May, which would be quite a quite a way to go into a general election. But the Bank of England are indicating they're not going to reduce interest rates. It drives me insane.
So you've got all of these challenges, and the question is, when is the right time? It's political calculus around when would be the right time. But there is a shot at May.
Well, I mean, look, what do you make of George Galloway's success? What does that tell us about the next however many months up to the next election and what the movement is going to be in the air?
It tells us that, as George Galloway himself has said, that Labour have a problem because he's gunning for the Labour Party from the perspective of where they are on Gaza and a Muslim vote that he obviously mobilised in Rochdale. I don't think he said yesterday the next election will be about Muslims. It will not.
It's an outrageous.
It will not.
That one seat was. His victory was.
That's right, but we all know by-elections can become one-issue conversations, and they're always unique. They don't reflect in the national general election. And Muslims, the vast majority of Muslims care about the same thing that you care about. You care about like cost of living.
Schools.
Is the NHS working? Are the streets safe? Are we getting the schooling right? So you know, it's not about Muslims, it'll be about the things that matter to the country. And George Galloway will not be as relevant, but he will be a thorn in the side of the Labour Party.
No, is that not another reason, though, for the Conservatives to just wait and sit it out? Let him get organised. Let him get candidates in the 60 seats. I think he's saying more this morning.
See, I think he's got momentum now, that's why the Tories will be tempted. He's got momentum if they start announcing candidates if they get one against Angela Rayner. There's already one against Wes Streeting, who's seen as the great white hope of the Labour Party. If more and more stand, then he has a real momentum, and
momentum is a big thing in politics,
it is.
and it doesn't last.
Fire in Gaza.
Well,
then that could change the landscape for Galloway.
That's right. So I think this could be Pete Galloway over the next couple of weeks and months.
Yeah.
And then it may move. He may lose that sort of that momentum as
and George Galloway does have a knack of falling out with people.
Yes.
Politics.
Yes, but he's an individual. He's a maverick. He's not a team player.
Will you go and listen to his maiden speech because he is a terrific speaker?
I admire his oratory. I have to say,
incredible.
I loved that time when he went up against the US senators and gave them what for.
Yeah.
But I'm not with him on the politics and the divisive nature that he brings to it. That's not what I'm involved in politics when I think why the vast majority of politicians
Why
are
do you
involved.
think it was him that made Rishi... Why was his victory in Rochdale the catalyst for Sunak to get his lectern out at number 10? What did that tell us about the Prime Minister?
I think it showed a Prime Minister that wanted to give a message to the country because the country's focus was on Rochdale. Again, a by-election. They have a disproportionate amount of attention thrown at them. The national agenda... The national news focuses on it. So it was a national message, even though it was Rochdale. And the Prime Minister wanted to set out where he stands. Because, obviously, George Galloway is calling out the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
So rattled. He was so rattled.
But I think it's a good thing the Prime Minister set out where he is. He didn't wait for the weekend. He didn't let George Galloway make the political weather.
Yeah.
He said, I'm going to be strong. I'm going to hit this head on.
Initiative of him.
He did.
I thought it was a good speech too.
Yes.
It was a powerful speech, and I think you need more of that because it felt like it came from the heart.
Yes, I agree.
But Galloway changes the weather.
He does, and that's why you have to wrestle back control from that. When you have a maverick like that, you can't let them set the agenda. And George Galloway's got nothing to lose.
My worry now, though, Culver, this whole idea that, well, we have to clamp down on extremism, and he packaged up Islamic extremism with the right-wing extremism, because, of course, they have to do that just to appear to be fair. And I worry now with changing the definition of extremism, that it's taking away freedoms, it's taking away freedom of speech, and that could end up on any of our doors.
I think the Prime Minister's message here was more about enforcing the law. I think it was about doing the things that the quiet majority of people are seeing not happen. When we see things that are wrong on these protests, when we see things that are not lawful, we want the police to respond.
What happened on Big Ben.
Exactly. We can't sit back and let these things happen.
And the police did nothing.
That's right.
And did it look to you like the protests at the weekend were managed slightly differently, because the Prime Minister had empowered the police?
I do think that was the case, yes. And that's another positive out of the Prime Minister taking back that control and saying this is what the people of this country want to see.
I'd like him to just have a little bit of the fearlessness that George Galloway has. George Galloway is absolutely fearless, isn't he?
Yes.
And I just want Sunak to just have a little soupçon more of that.
Bev, be careful what you wish for.
I agree.
And on that bombshell, Calvin, great to see you as always. So, vicars are furious, and you are, and I'm quite furious. After the Church of England is going to pay £1 billion towards what? Repairing churches, getting communities up and running? No. On clearing their conscience because of slavery that they didn't have anything to do with personally.
200 or 300 years ago.
Anyway, this is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Well, to cut a very long story short, I was the chaplain in a school, and a pupil asked me to preach on how come they were told they had to accept the LGBT stuff in a Christian school. I thought that was a fair question. So I said, ultimately, no, you don't have to accept anybody else's ideas. You make up your own minds. And so on topics like the marriage being between a man and a woman, biological sex being real, gender identity not making perfect sense, therefore can't be entirely true.
I said, you may adopt the church's position on that and respect the people you disagree with, but you make up your own mind. For which, as you say, I was reported to Prevent, the anti-terror watchdog, secular safeguarding authorities, the Teaching Regulation Agency, Disclosure and Barring Service, all of whom eventually cleared me. But I lost my job at the school, and that's why there's legal action ongoing.
It's an incredibly powerful sermon, to be fair. What do you make of Justin Welby in his current role? I've obviously rattled off quite a few things there. I mean, you've had personal experience of feeling quite abandoned. What's your view on his position?
Well, he's doing a very difficult job, in fairness to him. My personal view is perhaps he's not doing the best job of it. I'll be diplomatic about it. In a sense, I'm on the wrong side of things as far as he's concerned, I guess. Not a word of support, not a whisper from anyone in the Church of England's hierarchy for someone simply saying, you may accept the Church of England's own teaching. And I can't quite see how he can square that in his own head, but he would have to answer to that himself, I guess.
I mean, the irony is that, though this is obviously through no fault of your own, the Church of England has recently baptised people who have gone on to not just be referred to Prevent, but actually commit acts of terrorism. Meanwhile, you were referred to Prevent for essentially teaching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Brand new Sundays from 6 p.m. The Neil Oliver Show.
It's absolutely vital that people are given the opportunity to take part in the debate, to say the things that matter to them, to be challenged. A country is only really a shared dream. As long as enough people have a shared idea of what it is, then that country exists. What GB News does is give voices somewhere they can be heard.
The Neil Oliver Show. Sundays from 6 p.m. on GB News.
10:22 with Britain's News on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. And we've got in the studio our senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, and former government advisor, Claire Purcell. They know each other quite well, apparently.
I'm sorry we've made you spend another morning with your husband, Claire.
You know, I love him dearly, so
Oh,
it's fine.
so do we.
Nigel? Aren't you supposed to say,
I love you dearly?
Yes.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. He needs reminding.
Yes.
Yeah, you'll never hear Andrew and I say to each other.
No,
right,
never.
Moving on. Should we talk about George Galloway making this announcement yesterday? The next election, Claire, will be about Muslims. He knows he's deliberately provocative, doesn't he?
Well, of course he does. I mean, George Galloway has always been one of those characters, and I've seen him around the House of Commons over the last sort of 20 years. It's his MO.
Yeah.
He goes out there deliberately to start these conversations, to wind up the opposition and to get everybody talking about him.
Yeah.
And here we are. He has succeeded.
Yeah.
And his point about it's going to be a Muslim election, well, only because the Prime Minister seems to be reacting to every single word George Galloway says at the moment. And I think it just needs to calm down.
Yeah.
And it's so funny, isn't it? Because he would say he's standing on a ticket of representing this group of people, Muslims, particularly Muslims in Gaza, who are being persecuted. And yet to come out and say that is such a divisive and incendiary thing to say to the British public. He's not going to bring people together in support.
Well, he's not. I don't think he intends to either. I mean, that's just George Galloway. That's what that's the kind of thing he does. I wonder if it'll actually work. That at the moment we're nudging closer to a ceasefire, and they're talking about trying to negotiate one for 6 weeks from Ramadan next week. Already it's caused, this issue has caused Starmer a problem, President Biden's having a problem over in America. There's a lot of domestic reasons why why politicians want to get this off the ground. Once you get the ceasefire there, everything else kind of blends away. Other issues will then come up. So the protests, I'd have thought, would start to dissipate if a ceasefire happens. And the same thing when it comes down to the general election.
If the ceasefire holds, of course.
If the ceasefire holds. I mean, all the things, none of this may happen.
And then what? What is the solution to the Middle East with Israel and Gaza?
Well, then we're back to square. We're pretty much back to square one anyway. I mean,
and if the hostages haven't been released from Gaza,
well, there won't be a ceasefire unless the hostages, at least the ones that are still alive, are released. So we know sort of the ground rules there. Israel won't take part in it just at the moment, but they may be forced into it by America.
Is it personal as well, Claire, for Galloway, because he's an ex-Labour man, and if you read interviews with him, he says he's Labour by instinct. He's gone for the deputy leader of the Labour Party. He singled her out, Angela Rayner, majority of only 4,000, and he says she's vulnerable.
He's not wrong. I mean, yes, she will be vulnerable, just in the same way that every single MP is going to be vulnerable at this election. Doesn't matter sort of pretty much which party you're in. I find I think he doesn't really like the Starmer type of Labour Party. He is much more of a Corbynista style of Labour. It's old Labour. It's those slightly socialist views much more than we have at present. So it's interesting that he singled out a woman. There are many other Labour MPs with probably smaller majorities than Angela Rayner, and he has gone straight to the heart of the Labour Party and picking on her. And I think in a fight between those two, I'm not sure who the winner is, because she is a real tough cookie.
And they'll want to use her all over the country because she's a big hitter. But if she's got a strong candidate from Galloway's party in her constituency, that rather hems her in.
It does a little bit. It depends what her personal vote really is going to be. Yes, she had a slightly smaller majority at the last election, but that really was more of a Brexit election. Now it has changed. That question has gone away for the majority of times. So it depends really on what the people of her constituency are going to be coming out and voting on, and what she brings to that constituency. Because never forget, she works that hard, people know her very well, and people like her, and that goes a long way.
Right, let's talk about the Church of England scandal, Nigel. So the Church of England...
Nigel will agree, of course.
All got together.
Nigel will agree.
And
just wait, please. Just wait.
And they said, you know what, in the past we have done bad things. We have been involved in slavery, and we have, through our imperial ambitions, we have suppressed people. We need to pay them back. So we're going to have a whip round. We've got £1 billion we're going to pay to these communities to say sorry. And somebody said the best analogy I saw, it's like paying child support for a child you never had with a woman you never slept with.
Yes. I mean, I'm going to surprise Andrew now, by the way, and say, look, when it comes down to these things, I don't think that we make reparations for something that happened beyond living memory. Or in the living memory of close relatives. So there are certain times you give pardons to people. They've recently given pardons to gay armed forces personnel who were jailed for that. We've given an apology. They're alive now. That is quite right. This is historical, however you want to look at it. Yes, it was appalling. Should the church decide they want to give the money, I think any organisation or any individual can do that if they want to. The church has got plenty of it. It's got 200,000 acres of land. They're the second biggest landowner in this country next to the government. You might question whether that's actually a good idea. Roughly, they've got £3 billion they're sitting on, so they could give £1 billion away.
Why can't they get bombs on seats then?
Well, and I'd say, why can't they give the money to poor people here?
Well, that's what I was thinking, rather than paying for something which is out of living memory for us. And they're going to be asking wealthy donors to come up with the cash. It's not going to come out of their pockets. So it's a little bit, you need to practice what you preach. And I think if they turned their attentions to local communities, perhaps put back into those. And as you say, there are a lot of people who are struggling at the moment in their local community who would look kindly upon a church.
Cities where there's a large black population, they could do real welfare projects there.
They could
help people get job creation schemes.
They could also make use of the land that they have. They could be a bit more welcoming. And I've found this, whenever you go in to visit a church, I don't find them particularly welcoming.
No. Well, that's if they're open.
Well, so why are they doing this then? Why are they?
Virtue signalling.
What is it?
It is.
On our most sceptical hats They will have investments. The church,
big investments.
They will have to tick the ESG boxes for their environmental social governance.
That's right.
They're apparently on an absolute green trip as well, aren't they? They're becoming a little bit eco-zealotry as well in terms of their ambition. Is that partly to what this is about? It's not just clearing their conscience. There is actually a financial incentive for them to do this.
I'm not sure there's a financial incentive, but I mean, they are under a lot of pressure, like a lot of people are, to try and redress the grievances from the past. And obviously we've seen...
Under pressure from who?
Well, Caribbean countries at the moment.
Right.
I mean, a number of Caribbean countries may well leave the Commonwealth over this issue, that when the royals go travelling there, they get a hard time about this. It's
These are countries we give money to through international aid, through our taxes.
Yeah, I mean,
how much more
that's not to say we didn't treat them badly then, but then if you start trying to redress evils from the past, what about when Mary burned Protestants in the Middle Ages?
Well, exactly. And what about the Romans taking so many English people as slaves? We're going to get reparations from Italy.
Well, that would be nice, wouldn't it? I mean, it does get ridiculous as to where you stop. I mean, what about sort of Morocco were part of the slave trade? Do they need to pay reparations into Cornwall? Barbary slave trade, that was huge. Where do you end this? Because it has happened. It is a part of our history. We need to learn from it and make sure it never happens again. Giving money across to it, what's it going to achieve?
And where do they... And who and why and how do they allocate it? All sorts of issues.
Yes, there are, and that's what I mean. Individuals can do what they choose, but after that, we have another question mark.
Right, thank you both. Claire, Nigel, time to move on. We've got the latest headlines now with Tatiana Sanchez in the GB Newsroom.
Beth Turner, thank you very much for top stories from the GB Newsroom. Let's start with some breaking news. The Princess of Wales is to make her first royal engagement since undergoing surgery. She'll take part in a review of Trooping the Colour. That's a ceremonial event performed every year on Horse Guards Parade in London. Also taking part will be over 1,400 soldiers of the Household Division and the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery. We'll bring you more on this breaking news story as we get it. To our top story today, and the NHS could be facing real-term funding cuts of £2 billion as the Chancellor comes under pressure ahead of tomorrow's budget. Analysis by the Institute for Fiscal Studies suggests the health service could suffer a 1.2% cut in day-to-day spending across England, which would be the largest reduction since the 1970s. It could mean the health service is forced to cut staffing or pay despite rising costs and a promise to tackle waiting lists. The warning comes after Jeremy Hunt suggested a more efficient public sector could give the government greater scope for tax cuts. The Rwanda bill suffered another series of defeats in the House of Lords last night, in many cases by unusually large margins of more than 100 votes. Peers backed 5 changes to the government's flagship immigration bill, including an assurance that the safety of Rwanda can be challenged in the courts. Nearly 50 amendments were put forward, with more to be voted on today. To the United States, where Donald Trump won a caucus vote in North Dakota last night, further strengthening his grip on the Republican Party. The former president is predicted to dominate more contests tonight as the US prepares for what's known as Super Tuesday, which sees 15 states and 1 territory hold simultaneous votes. Mr. Trump is inching closer to clinching the Republican nomination as his only remaining challenger, Nikki Haley, struggles to secure enough wins. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts.
For stunning gold and silver coins you'll always value, Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2684 and €1.1688. The price of gold, we don't have that right now, is £1,676 and 18 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 7,620 points.
Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
We're talking about Princess of Wales here. We're gossiping about whether it could be her in the picture.
We've got some breaking news. Cameron Walker is our royal correspondent.
We do.
Break the news for us.
The Ministry of Defence have announced an engagement for the Princess of Wales.
Hooray!
Kensington Palace not confirming, but if it's true, it would be the first scheduled engagement of the Princess of Wales since that abdominal surgery, further quelling the rumours online that perhaps the Princess is more ill than she seems. So it's the Trooping the Colour review. So a week before the King's birthday parade, where in theory His Majesty the King would inspect the troops of the Household Division, another member of the royal family takes part in what's called the Colonel's Review. The Princess of Wales is Colonel of the Irish Guards, so she is expected to be at Horse Guards parade, inspecting hundreds of troops, but in particular the Irish Guards, the regiments in the Household Division. Clearly, this has not been confirmed by Kensington Palace, but the British Army have published this morning which members of the royal family will be taking part in the reviews, and it is this year's turn is the Princess of Wales.
So that's June.
This is June the 8th.
That's a long way off.
It is, but it's the first engagement we've had from anyone official that's been scheduled post-abdominal surgery.
Do you think the Ministry of Defence have published without the Kensington Palace knowing?
Yeah, I think perhaps I'm getting the sense that perhaps because it hasn't been confirmed by Kensington Palace, but it's perhaps been a matter of course for the Ministry of Defence to publish their details for June's Trooping the Colour at this time of year, and perhaps haven't realised.
And the MOD will just be thinking, well, they said she's going to be out after Easter. Easter's last weekend of March. Not a big deal, is it, to say that she's going to be out in June?
Well, exactly. So that's perhaps their thinking. Whether Kensington Palace thinks the same thing, we'll have to wait and see. As of yet, there's been no comment from them, but it does show clearly in an official black and white document that the Princess of Wales is scheduled to take part, and in fact His Majesty the King is scheduled to still do Trooping the Colour in June. Now, whether that's going to happen is a whole other thing, because he is, of course, because of his cancer diagnosis.
And if he does do it, will he be riding a horse?
Well, exactly. He did last year. It was. I remember watching. He did.
You think about Andrew?
Well, I remember he rode his horse last year.
He did.
But he may not be well enough to ride his horse this year.
And it was a very naughty horse last year because he kept going off centre at the centre gate of Buckingham Palace.
So what date is that? When are we going to see her? June?
Right, 8th of June, in theory, Princess of Wales.
Diaries, everybody.
Yeah, there we go.
I think we'll see her.
But I think we'll see her before then too.
Yeah, I hope we do.
I'm not sure we have yet, though, to be honest.
Yeah.
Right, Cameron, great to see you again. Right, moving on in a new GB News series, Innovation Britain. It's good news time. We're looking at the success of British manufacturing around the country.
How many companies do you know that export 65% of what they make? Andrew, what's the export market been like for you?
This year, it's really held up well. The export market has grown, so we've had nice growth on that point, but also we've had good sustained business on a UK basis as well.
Now, obviously, you've been a UK company for over 40 years. So what's it been like through them years?
Everybody's had their ups and downs, and we're no different. But since the 2008 crash, we're right back up to the same sort of figures, if not more. So we've had certainly really good growth over the last certainly 10 years.
So what's this year been like for you?
Good. We've seen some work certainly coming from the defence side of things with the political situation as it stands at the minute. There's been spending on defence this year, and that will certainly continue into the future.
And obviously we've talked about how much you export. So what work do you actually do and what industries do you work in?
It's all basically petrochemical, refinery, nuclear, with Hinkley Point coming on soon. That's been good for us. There's hopefully going to be Sizewell C coming up, and that should be good for us as well.
Now, just last question, obviously, there's a lot of bad news in UK manufacturing, but how are you finding it as a business owner?
It's been difficult. Certain things have given us some challenges, but I think those challenges are the same the world over. I think, generally UK manufacturing is in a fairly good state.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Mail on Sunday, and the University of Buckingham is calling out wokery at the University of Cambridge. So I guess the culture wars must be almost over then, Josh.
Almost, yeah. Cambridge University discriminating against rich, white, privileged, privately educated men, claims...
The worst
which
kind.
is basically me. Claims Vice-Chancellor of rival institution, which is launching a degree course on the rise of woke culture. Now, I 100% agree with this. I applied to get into Cambridge, and I didn't get in because I was too thick.
Oh, wow, so it wasn't the DEI mafia?
No, unfortunately, it was pre-DEI. So it's like a double insult now.
Were you one of those guys who was like had a B, a B average? You know, you look like you should be an A because you act like an A.
I act like an A.
You act
I've
like
got
an
glasses.
A. Yeah.
They're fake. I don't even have to. They don't even have lenses. In
Lewis, do you think that this is a little bit cynical? Because I looked up this University of Buckingham, and they opened in 1973, and their tagline on the internet is the home of the two-year degree. They're trying to bring down Cambridge University with this.
Well, why not pick the biggest? I mean, that's why we should. We should be attacking the BBC 24/7 on this thing.
I thought we were.
We aren't. We don't mention it enough.
In?
What I found shocking about this story is Buckingham is the country's oldest private university, and was founded in 1976. Something is wrong there. What do you think? Was Oxford founded by the government? I don't think it was. Was Cambridge?
No, absolutely not. I looked up Cambridge was 1209.
Yes,
so
exactly.
So you can
it
get...
wasn't a government
But this is
grant.
actually quite scary. They can do a course on the origins of the woke movement. I'm just saying, someone's going to have a degree, and our job is going to be under threat. They're going to know much more than us.
Never.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's not a programme I ever normally give a flying what's it for Celebrity Big Brother, but it launched last night and I was vaguely interested because one guest has caused a major stir. Let's have a look.
Gary Goldsmith, the uncle to the future Queen of our country, Catherine Middleton, the current Princess of Wales. She is simply perfect. First time I met William, Catherine was cooking and William said, "Hi, do you want a cup of tea?" Very normal. I often read that people think I'm a bit of a bad boy. It'd be lovely to put the record straight, but winding people up is probably my favourite hobby. Every part of me is just riddled with mischief and danger.
So we're joined now by showbiz reporter Stephanie Tecci. Good morning, Steph. Good to see you. I watched Big Brother last night, and I've not watched it for years, and it was partly because he is an interesting character. If what the ITV wanted was to get people to tune in, it works.
Definitely, but this was a big win for I'm Celebrity producers. Gary Goldsmith is the loose-lipped uncle that you would rather not have at the party or on screen on a reality TV show. So he's a big winning for this season. Whether he's going to last long, I don't know, because already Sharon Osbourne has potentially put him up for public nomination by Friday. But, Gary's been courting the press over the last few years, and just before he went in the house, he done an interview with The Sun where he said that he will be sharing family anecdotes, which is not really what the palace would want to hear, especially as Kate is away from the limelight at the moment. And he is a fiery character. He said he's a nightmare to live with. So, to be honest, the reason why I think the royals might be, hanging off the edge of their seat, because all the headlines he will generate will come indirectly back to Kate.
And of course, that's the whole reason they want him in there, ITV, because they want him to be indiscreet. Every time he's indiscreet, we'll all be talking about it in programmes like this.
Well, apparently, Andrew, apparently Carol Middleton has had a word with her brother before he went into the house to kind of give him the do's and don'ts of what he's allowed to say in the house. But you see, the way these producers work, they've got fiery characters. You might have some characters in there who are pro-Harry and Meghan and might say something wrong about Kate. In a recent interview he's done, he said Kate is not racist. So all these headlines are going to generate back to Kate Middleton, where it's out of the news cycle. So to have them back again is quite distasteful. He's been paid money to get on there, so he has to give the producers and what viewers potentially want from him.
Do we know what they've paid him, Stephanie?
I'm not sure what he got paid. I know Sharon Osbourne, she might not be doing the whole 3 weeks, but apparently she's got paid $500,000 to be in the house for just 5 days. So I don't think she'll be, for him, he's probably got paid. Yeah, it's a lot of money because this series has been off air for at least 5 years. So they've had to pay the top pound to get these stars to act up on this reality show.
Do you think reality shows are just losing favour with the public, Stephanie? Because, I mean, look, I'm a Celebrity was huge at the end of last year, wasn't it? And this feels like it's got a little bit of a revival now. I don't know why. I feel like it's just cutting through a little bit this year. Maybe it's got also other people who are in there. Fern Britton, lovely lady. But there's quite an interesting distinction, isn't there, between the older people who our generation might know, Fern Britton, Sharon Osbourne, Louis Walsh, and then you've got the youngsters, the influencers, who Sharon Osbourne and Louis Walsh were sat there watching them come in going, I've no idea who that person is, which a lot of the viewers will be doing too.
Well, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, Bev, because you've got all these younger celebrities who are coming in. They've got a big following on social media, so their kind of fans will bring the ratings up for ITV. And older audiences might not be interested in I'm a Celebrity, but curiosity always kills the cat. So if you're getting people like Fern Britton who might start talking about Philip Schofield, you've got Gary Goldsmith who will talk about Kate Middleton. So you might hate reality TV shows, but you might just want to watch to see what these people will do. And in this age of cancel culture, 3 weeks in a house, something is definitely going to go down.
I think you said I'm a Celebrity, Steph, but that's probably because it's only day one if you're doing interviews about Big Brother, and you did so many brilliant interviews about I'm a Celebrity. We've got a few more months until that, but we will be talking to you regularly, Steph. Thank you so much. Showbiz reporter Stephanie Tetchy there. Now,
I hope he doesn't get voted out straight away, because I think he's going to be quite entertaining.
Yeah, he is. Well, exactly. I think, you know what, I take people as I find them, and I'd like to make my own opinion about him if I watch much more of it. Is it Rule Britannia? Is it gone? No longer. Rule Britannia rules the waves. One MP thinks it should be scrapped from the Proms. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my new show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m, where real people get to meet those in power and hold them to account. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country in the real world. Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
So I love the music. Rule Britannia, Britannia rules the waves. Britain's never, never, never.
Go on, sing it.
No, I'm not going to sing it.
Come on.
Rule Britannia, Britannia rules the waves. Britain never, never, never will be slaves.
Well done.
How about that?
That was very unexpected. Well, it was once a rousing patriotic anthem. It's now considered alienating, according to Shadow Culture Secretary Thangham Debonair. Let's have a listen. That was Catherine Jenkins. It just sounded exactly the same as when you sung it there,
If only I've missed my big opportunity in life.
Well, we're joined now by political commentator Femi Nylander. Morning, Femi. Great to see you. There you
Morning.
are. Brilliant. Right. Is it offensive to sing Rule Britannia? And if so, why?
I mean, of course, we can go down the route, and I often do when I have this discussion, of the fact that Rule Britannia, rule the waves, Britain never will be slaves. It's about the idea that we're running the slave trade, we're ruling the waves, at the same time as we are actively colonizing and enslaving others. But I mean, that angle has been overdone somewhat. I think a better angle to do as well is to just say we don't rule the waves anymore. British power has been declining significantly for a very long time. I don't think we're even in the top 10 navies in the world. We don't rule if you look at 1956, even if you look at the Suez crisis in Egypt, we were embarrassed. We went with the French and the Israelis to try and take over a canal which was central to world shipping, and we were told by the Americans, you naughty boys, don't do that again, stop. So Britain is following America around like a little lapdog a lot of the time, doing whatever they want. Look at the Iraq war, whatever. Look at the situation at the moment with Palestine. Britain's global power has been declining significantly for decades and decades and decades. And so for British people to stand up and say, Britannia rule the waves, despite the fact that it obviously was a celebration of slavery at the time, is untrue, because Britannia doesn't rule the waves, it doesn't rule its colonies, and it has become in many ways a lapdog to the Yanks.
But is it offensive, Femi?
Yes, it is offensive. I just wanted to make the point that obviously we're not as powerful as we used to be either.
But why is it offensive?
Offensive. Why are those sentiments offensive? Because obviously at that time, and Britain still does, despite its kind of waning global influence, still does have a lot of dodgy operations going on in Africa. It still has a very, very, very poor relationship with previous kind of members of its previous colonies in the Caribbean. The sentiment of the song when it was written was obviously Britain is ruling the waves, it's running the slave trade, it's colonizing other countries. We're not worrying about visas and immigration when we go there to take over their people and steal their resources. Obviously today it's all, oh, these immigrants coming here. We weren't thinking about border regimes when we went and colonized the world, were we? And that was the sentiment that song was written in. The song was written in the sentiment of let's go and rule the waves, take people's resources, take people's lives, bring them over to the UK, or not to the UK, to the Caribbean, force them to work for us for free, etc., etc.
And Femi, we can all see with the passage of time that we might look back on that with a bit of moral relativity and see that through a slightly different lens. However, that happened. That was the past. And I think what you're saying is we should just now give up on being a great nation. We need to come up with a song that basically celebrates the fact that we're losers on the global stage. And I think language changes with time. So when I hear Britain never, never shall be slaves, that means something quite differently to me as somebody that believes in civil liberties and the individual. I see that, I project onto that a 2024 emotion.
Well, again, though, Britain is still involved in forced labour in many parts in the world. It's not true to say that Britain isn't still involved in elements of slavery.
Where are we doing that?
So if you read a report by War on Want called The New British Colonialism, it's either called The New British, I think it's The New British Colonialism, War on Want, Google War on Want, The New British Colonialism, you'll find that Britain is involved in a number of mining companies listed on the London Stock Exchange, which basically use forced labour on the African continent.
Right,
obviously, there's links to sweatshops in Bangladesh.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. A messy picture today. For many, it's a fine early spring day, but there are a few heavy showers around. Low pressure is drifting away from Northern Ireland. We've got a couple of old weather fronts, though, milling around, one providing quite a lot of cloud across the east and a little bit of showery rain, and some heavy showers possible across the far southeast, particularly through parts of Kent. A bit of showery rain also drifting its way into western parts of Scotland, but a good chunk of Wales, northwest England, southwest England, Northern Ireland having a fine afternoon with some decent spells of sunshine. And in the west, it feels a bit warmer than yesterday, 10, 11, maybe 12 degrees Celsius, where it stays rather glum in the east. 7 or 8 Celsius will still feel pretty chilly, and particularly if you're caught out by one of these heavy showers across the southeast, it'll feel even cooler. They will steadily fade through the evening, but further outbreaks of rain could trickle back across parts of northeast Scotland. For many, it's a dry night, and in the west, where we'll have the highest temperatures today, we'll have the lowest temperatures overnight, and a frost likely through parts of Wales, the West Midlands and southwest England too. So a chilly start here, but a bright start. Could be some freezing fog patches around. Just be aware of that first thing in the morning. Quite a grey day again across these eastern areas, eastern England, eastern Scotland. A little bit of rain here and there, and a few more showers then come the afternoon over the East Midlands down towards southeast England. Again, best of the sunshine in the west, although some rain could creep into Cornwall later on. Goodbye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
11 a.m. on Tuesday, the 5th of March. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. So the Princess of Wales has her first engagement announced by the Ministry of Defence, and she's also been spotted, we think, for the first time since surgery. But we can't show you the photo.
George Galloway was sworn in as an MP yesterday, declaring he's going to overturn Labour's Deputy Leader Angela Rayner's majority in Ashton-under-Lyne. She has a majority of just 4,000. He also said this about the upcoming election.
So that's what I'm predicting here. The next election will be about Muslims and will be about the taking away of civil liberties in this country.
Controversial. Well, some vicars are furious after the Church of England looks set to pay £1 billion for slavery, reparations from 300 years ago.
And a huge day in the United States. Super Tuesday, voters in 16 states are choosing candidates for president less than 24 hours after Donald Trump was cleared to run for president by the US Supreme Court.
We're going to have Greg Swenson in the studio to tell us all about that big day for Donald Trump, this massive.
It certainly is.
Let us know your thoughts this morning, gbviews@gbnews.com. And I need to remind you that if you want to be as part of our GB News family tomorrow night, we're going to be in Whitehaven. Michelle is doing her show from 6 o'clock. Nigel will be doing his show as normal from 7 o'clock. I'll be there propping up the bar. We've got a budget special for you tomorrow. So we're going to show you the QR code after the news to get your phone ready, or go on to gbnews.com if you're in the area. We would love to see you. First, though, the very latest news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Bev, thank you. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The NHS could be facing real-term funding cuts of £2 billion as the Chancellor comes under pressure ahead of tomorrow's budget. Analysis by the Institute for Fiscal Studies suggests the health service could suffer a 1.2% cut in day-to-day spending across England, which would be the largest reduction since the 1970s. It could mean the health service is forced to cut staffing or pay despite rising costs and a promise to tackle waiting lists. The warning comes after Jeremy Hunt suggested that a more efficient public sector could give the government greater scope for tax cuts. Business Minister Greg Hands told GB News the government is being responsible.
The government intervened well and correctly over recent years, for example, during the pandemic, in terms of the supporting people to remain in employment, the fact the government paid a big part of people's energy bills over the last couple of winters. I think people support that. That is why there's been an increase in public spending. But, as I said earlier, the economy is now turning a corner, and that then sets us up nicely to be able to afford things like tax cuts.
But Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth says the budget won't be enough and it's time for an election.
It's why I think now, after 14 years of the Conservatives, it really is time for change. But I think that opportunity for change is coming, because I think there's going to be a May general election. Lots of gossip swirling around in this place about a May general election. And I think Rishi Sunak, and this is my demand for Rishi Sunak, I'm sure he's watching GB News this morning, my demand to Rishi Sunak is name the date.
Anticipation is building ahead of the Chancellor's budget, with experts suggesting that any cuts to courts, police or local authorities may not be realistic. We asked local residents in Glasgow and in East Yorkshire what they want to see in the budget.
I'd like to see him listen to the people as well for a change. They seem to give all these promises and never keep them.
It'd be nice for the petrol to go down and stop putting money on council tax and stuff like that. People can't afford it.
Businesses are struggling at the moment, the market's struggling, so I think they just need a little bit of a more stable background in the economy.
Raise your tax allowance, because now some pensioners are going to find themselves in a tax bracket.
The Rwanda bill suffered another series of defeats in the House of Lords last night, in many cases by unusually large margins of more than 100 votes. Peers backed 5 changes to the government's flagship immigration bill, including an assurance that the safety of Rwanda can be challenged in the courts. Nearly 50 amendments were put forward, with more to be voted on today. However, the scale of last night's defeat raises the chances of a drawn-out tussle between the Lords and the Commons. An agreement on a revised offer for consultant doctors in England has been reached in a potential step towards solving the ongoing dispute. The British Medical Association and the Hospital Consultants and Specialists Association will now recommend the offer to their members ahead of an expected vote. The Health Secretary says it paves the way for an end to the strikes, while the Prime Minister says it's proof that seeking a fair agreement is the best way forward for everyone. A woman has been arrested on suspicion of murder after a 10-year-old girl was found dead in the West Midlands. Police said they found the child with injuries at an address in Sandwell yesterday afternoon. She was confirmed dead at the scene. A 33-year-old woman understood to be known to the girl has been arrested and taken into custody. The Princess of Wales is set to make her first royal engagement since undergoing surgery. She'll take part in a review of Trooping the Colour, a ceremonial event performed every year on Horse Guards Parade in London on the 8th of June. Also taking part will be over 1,400 soldiers of the Household Division and the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery. And in the United States, where Donald Trump won a caucus vote in North Dakota last night, further strengthening his grip on the Republican Party. The former president's predicted to dominate more contests tonight as the US prepares for what's known as Super Tuesday, which sees 15 states and 1 territory hold simultaneous votes. Mr. Trump is inching closer to clinching the Republican nomination as his only remaining challenger, Nikki Haley, struggles to secure enough wins. However, his various legal troubles may cause some complications as he faces 91 criminal charges across 4 states. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Very good morning. It's 11:07. Thank you for joining us on Britain's Newsroom this morning. You have been getting in touch. I'm sorry we haven't got so many of them. It's been a packed show this morning. On George Galloway, Richie has said Galloway shouldn't be an MP. He should be in jail in the next election. According to Galloway, it's going to be about Muslims. This is a Christian country, not an Islamic country. The man is a traitor.
Why should he be in jail?
Pond slime. I don't know. He's not, I don't think he should be in jail, to be honest. I don't think he's done anything to land himself in jail. And Terry said, so here is George giving the impression that he's fighting their cause and claiming he still wants social cohesion. This is the point I tried to make earlier. It's a contradiction in terms. Hypocrisy comes to mind. He's viciously stirring the pot into a religious cultural conflict. He's dangerous, but he's entitled to his opinion.
He is. He absolutely is. Rwanda, it's got you very aerated, as you might, as I'm not surprised. Ken says the citizens of this country do worry about Rwanda because the numbers coming into this country are devastating. It matters to voters. And Bob says, can someone please inform the buffoons in the House of Lords that the United Kingdom is a dangerous place to live, especially in areas with high immigrant populations? It's probably too late to make our country safer. The damage has been done.
Keep your messages coming this morning, gbviews@gbnews.com.
Well, the Princess of Wales is going to have her first engagement since surgery, and it's been announced by the Ministry of Defence.
That's right. She's going to take part in a formal review of the Trooping of the Colour, but not until June.
Joining us now is former BBC Royal commentator Michael Cole. Michael, if we could ask you, first of all, good morning to you. The photograph that we've seen of, apparently, Kate Middleton, although my colleague here is not sure it's her, in the front seat with her mother in the car, the British media have decided not to publish it, same with broadcasters. Is that the right decision, bearing in mind she is recovering from some pretty complicated, unpleasant surgery?
Yeah, good morning, Andrew. Good morning, Beverly. I think I should start by extending our collective good wishes to the Princess of Wales for a continuing and complete recovery as soon as possible. And it's good to know that she's already booked for the Trooping of the Colour at the beginning of the summer. Yes, this photograph has been published, as you say, Andrew, in America on a celebrity website, TMZ. I've seen it, of course, on the internet myself. It certainly, Beverly, looks like her, wearing big glasses.
It looks like Pippa. It looks more like Pippa to me.
Well, they were driving in the same 4x4 that Prince William used when he went to the London clinic to see his wife. So I think that's another straw in the wind. If she is up and about, that would be a good thing. And it would have been, of course, a very brilliant way of scotching all the vile rumours that have been going around about her. On this very channel, I've said at least twice that it would have been a good idea for Kensington Palace, that was very candid as it could be when she went into hospital, to actually give some sort of guidance about her condition or even where she was. Now, maybe somebody was listening, and that little expedition yesterday, knowing that there would be someone around with a camera who might have snapped her, and there we see her in much happier times, and we hope that she returns to rude good health very, very, very soon. So maybe this was a very subtle way of scotching those rumours, because as you know, if you've had a look, some dreadful stuff is being said. Isn't it amazing, Andrew and Beverly, isn't it amazing that you can take something as wonderful and brilliant as the internet and social media and turn them into a cesspit or a piranha pool or a mixture of the both? Isn't it incredible?
Most of the speculation that I've seen, Michael, about her whereabouts has just been funny. There have been a lot of funny memes. There was a meme last night that she walked into the Big Brother house and there she was. We wondered where she'd been. I mean, the British sense of humour comes out brilliantly at a time like this. Some of the stuff was hilarious online.
Yes.
And presumably she isn't reading it.
There was a Brazilian reference as well, which I'm sure you also saw. But some of it was really nasty about her medical condition and saying that she'd been put into an induced coma and intubated and so on and so forth. And, of course, Kensington Palace had to come out and say that it was total ludicrous and it was total nonsense. But if she was on the school run yesterday with her mother, I think that is actually the key to it, because she, through KP, issued a statement saying that she hoped the public would understand, and I'll read it to you, her desire to maintain as much normality for her children as possible and her wish that her personal medical information remains private. Obviously, she doesn't want her children going to school and the other kids in the playground saying, "What's wrong with your mum?" or "I've heard your mum's got this, that and the other." And I think who wouldn't want to avoid that?
Well, I hope it
she's
was
entitled she's entitled to her privacy, as you would be, as any person would be, man or woman.
Michael,
the other thing...
Just let me interrupt you for a second. I saw you on the telly last night on the Channel 4 series investigating Diana, death in Paris. I didn't realise, apologies, but I didn't realise quite how significant you were at that period of time working for the Al Fayed family, particularly in the aftermath of Princess Diana and Dodi's death. Now, what struck me, the juxtaposition of watching how the paparazzi and the media worked 30 years ago, is it, compared to now?
26.
It is chalk and cheese.
26. Well, of course, it has completely changed. I think it changed with Charlie Spencer's eulogy at Westminster Abbey when he castigated. He said Diana, the huntress of classical mythology, was Diana the hunted. And that doesn't happen in this country anymore, and thank goodness for that. Yeah. So the Middlesex house in Berkshire was not being staked out. And nor should it be. I don't know who took this photograph. Maybe it was a member of the public and saw an advantage to make a few bob by selling it. But maybe by the same token, it may have been a subtle way of KP to try and scotch these rumours, because they are vile. I mean, the woman is recovering. Let's give her our best wishes for that. She doesn't need these distractions. And it is completely unreal. I mean, she's not coy about discussing her health, because as you well remember, before she gave birth to Prince George, she had suffered terrible morning sickness. She went into hospital, and she has referred to it afterwards if she thought it was appropriate, and helped other people with the same condition to cope with it. So she wants to keep things private. At the due time, if she feels happy about it, she should tell us whatever she wants to. And until then, the prying eyes should be averted.
Okay.
All right. That's
Thank you, Michael.
Cole. Great to talk to you as always. Michael Cole, former BBC Royal correspondent, who, of course, I used to deal with him when he worked for Mohammed Al-Fayed.
I had no idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we've got with us in the studio, Kevin's here from HuffPost.
I was very impressed with these enormous pocket square, I've got to say. Mine's is nothing like
He's so dapper. Is so dapper. Kevin, George Galloway, he's larger than life. He's going to completely turn Parliament upside down, isn't he?
I think so, and I think he's particularly going to cause trouble for Labour.
Yeah.
He wants to expose the divisions in the Labour Party over Gaza, and there still are huge divisions. Now, they've cobbled together a position now, Labour, about an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. Now, we know that was brought about to try and quell a rebellion, which they did manage to by leaning on the Speaker. But George Galloway's been very clear. He will work with the SNP to try and bring a debate back to Parliament and another vote on an immediate ceasefire. Now, given that Lindsay Hoyle's come in for a lot of criticism, the way he handled the last debate...
He's going to have to allow that vote to happen.
You would have thought so. And that, again, could pose quite a lot of problems for Labour.
I think it's interesting that he's targeted by name Angela Rayner, the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. Is it because she's a woman?
I don't know if it's because she's a woman. I'm not surprised that he's decided to go after a woman in this way. What's interesting is, from speaking to Labour people, is that they want Angela Rayner to play a very prominent role in the election campaign. So were George Galloway's party to put up some sort of high-profile candidate, I don't know who that would be, and make that a big issue in the campaign, then it
would pin her down in the constituency.
Exactly.
She's got a majority of 4,000.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's not as if she's... I mean, I'd say she probably is
quite safe. Be safe.
But, any time that she needs to spend in her seat means there's less time when she's out round the country campaigning, because the party thinks that she is a huge asset.
I said this morning, I find him a very slippery character. I'm not massively familiar with his political backstory, but I've seen him be described as far left, and I've seen him be described as far right.
I know. I caught he's on the Corbyn wing of the Labour Party.
And so, but why? What is it about him that would define him in 2020? I think those terms are pretty much redundant in 2024 anyway. But what is it about his politics, Kevin, that see him on the far left of politics?
Well, he certainly wasn't. When he was in the Labour Party, he was on the left of the party. That's undeniable. I think his anti-war stance is probably going back to the Iraq War and preceding it, actually, to the first Iraq War. He was very much against Western intervention in the Middle East. I think that placed him on the left of politics. What was interesting, you mentioned Jeremy Corbyn. Now, Jeremy Corbyn didn't turn up yesterday.
He was supposed to introduce him.
Yeah, exactly, and he made sure that he was not around. I think there's a split there between them, that they don't see eye to eye on Gaza, actually. So Jeremy Corbyn made sure he wasn't around.
So they wheeled out the Speaker, the Father of the House by convention.
Who had to do it,
and an MP from the Alba
Party, Neil Hanvey.
Break away from the SNP.
That was a bit of a surprise, yeah.
Kevin, we've got to love you and leave you, I'm afraid. We've run out of time, but still to come. Would you kiss a Tory? I bet you've kissed a few. We're going to be joined by a couple who don't seem to have any objections. You're with Britain's Newsroom.
We should have asked Kevin. Have you kissed a Tory, Kevin?
I think so.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Yeah, so describe the contents of the letter for us, because it is quite strongly worded, isn't it? And it suggests that your property is empty. And what do they suggest it's going to be used for?
They say, as part of this process, Northamptonshire Council is identifying empty properties and sites within the area, with the aim of encouraging owners to bring premises back into use or to find alternative options for derelict sites. The resettlement team in Northamptonshire Council supports asylum seekers and refugees across 3 different projects: Homes for Ukraine, Afghan resettlement and asylum dispersal. At present, we are seeing a considerable increase in positive immigration decisions being made in favour of asylum seekers. So basically, they're wanting accommodation. But who goes around and assesses whether these properties are lived in or they are actually empty?
Clearly, Ted, no one had bothered to come and look at your house at all, had they?
What do you want now? Because clearly you are both very shaken by this letter, and that letter that you received in response has not gone far enough. Do you want an apology? What more do you want to see?
Well, she said here that she's, I sincerely apologise, this Lindsay Bellchambers, but I don't see, there was no explanation as to how they've come to say this property was empty, whether it was disused, whether it was unkempt, or what. If you go back through the history of the property, it's not been empty.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Brand new Sundays from 6 p.m. The Neil Oliver Show.
It's absolutely vital that people are given the opportunity to take part in the debate, to say the things that matter to them, to be challenged. A country is only really a shared dream. As long as enough people have a shared idea of what it is, then that country exists. What GB News does is give voices somewhere they can be heard.
The Neil Oliver Show. Sundays from 6 p.m. on GB News.
It's 11:22, you're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Andrew Pearce, and we're joined in the studio again by our senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, and his long-suffering wife, former government advisor, Claire Purcell. Now, you were thrilled to see Jonathan Ashworth, weren't you, Andrew?
Actually, I like Jonathan.
Well, he was on GB News this morning on Breakfast, and here's what he had to say.
It's why I think now, after 14 years of the Conservatives, it really is time for change. But I think that opportunity for change is coming, because I think there's going to be a May general election. Lots of gossip swirling around in this place about a May general election. And I think Rishi Sunak, and this is my demand for Rishi Sunak, I'm sure he's watching GB News this morning, my demand to Rishi Sunak is name the date.
I like him too.
He's very amiable.
He is very amiable,
and he's effective. I don't know why he was demoted in the last reshuffle.
No, I mean, he's been shifted around several posts. I mean, the one he really was great at was health.
Yeah. And but they wanted to give it to
West Streeting,
the big star of the show.
Yeah.
Is he right, though? Do we need a general election now, or at least May as the
We need a general election as soon as we can possibly have one, yes. Whether they'll actually do it, we'll have to see. But they've been laying the groundwork since last year. So things like the national insurance cut came in January. That gave you 4 months in pay packets to lead up to the election. Tax-cutting budget coming up tomorrow. He wants to avoid May the 2nd local elections because you'll get a drubbing and Tory MPs might try and unseat him.
Yeah. So you would do general elections, local elections
on May the 2nd,
on the same day.
On the same day, and then you've got Rwanda flights. Well, at the moment, the last date he could call a May the 2nd election would be March 26th.
Yeah.
It is possible that they'll get the Rwanda bill out of the House of Lords before then, and a flight might take off on the 20th, 21st, or something.
But what if
like
some
that.
wretched European Court judge says you can't do it? He'll ignore the European Court.
Well, that's what he said he'd do.
Hooray!
That's what he said he'd do.
Long overdue.
Yeah.
Well, that would give him a fillip in the polls.
Yes, it would. I mean, the whole thing is it's a very tight deadline. I still think that when you look at the polls at the moment, I think May the 2nd was always the plan. The polls, to me, make it look like, oh, do we really want to get completely wiped out? I mean, there was a poll yesterday that left
27.
Tories with 25 MPs.
I didn't buy that.
No, nor do I. I don't believe it'll happen. The polls will narrow when the election comes, but that was the figure. So at the moment, you're kind of thinking, I hope something turns up, or Labour make a mess of things, or something like that.
Yeah.
And you then go long. But certainly May the 2nd still remains a possibility.
Claire?
I think the longer you leave it, the worse it gets.
That's what I think.
He really does.
It's any worse.
Oh, it can.
Yeah.
It can. It absolutely can. We've not seen anything yet.
Yeah.
And I think that as Nigel said, you had the national insurance cut in January. They hoped that would give people a boost. However, there was still things that went wrong in between times, and we've had by-elections. There's always something.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the good news is for the government. There's always something that goes and messes it up in the sidelines. Normally, one of their own members saying something stupid, doing something stupid, causing a by-election. But, that's as maybe. But I do think that to avoid the drubbing like we had in the last set of local elections last year, you do it all on one day and get the pain out.
The other thing is Galloway has momentum. I know he's only one man, but if he's going to stand 50, 60 candidates, we know there's already independent Muslims standing against a number of high-profile Labour MPs already. That momentum could peter out after May, but he's got momentum between now and then, and I think that could be another factor.
See, I don't think that momentum will last very long.
Right.
I think that the George Galloway sort of press conference, that's kind of his last hurrah. He's now elected.
Yeah.
He's in the House of Commons. He's given his press conference. He'd like to speak in the budget debate. He's got to do a maiden speech. And then what? And if we do get the ceasefire that we're all hoping for in the Middle East, that kind of busts everything that he's been standing on. So I think that naturally the political train moves on. I think people look at general elections very differently from by-elections, and we can never extrapolate what happens in by-elections with what's going to happen nationally.
But I think also what George Galloway tells us is that people are sick of both parties, both main parties. And there will have been people that voted for George Galloway, not just on the Gaza issue, but actually on the fact that they just wanted somebody independent, a thorn in the side of the establishment.
But this was a freak by-election. I mean, as Claire says, you can't always predict what's going to happen nationally through a by-election, but this one was particularly unusual. So Labour voters had nowhere to go. I think it was more significant than George Galloway getting elected that it was a local businessman who came second purely on local issues. So people were saying, well, look, we don't fancy the Tories, Lib Dems...
But that's my point. Everyone's sick of the establishment.
I think that's true. So there is room for someone to come through on something like that.
In fact, if that chap had had another week, you wonder if the Independent might have even won.
Yeah, he might have won.
Because he was piling up votes.
Except that every single seat is going to be contesting with a very organised Muslim community who get out and they vote, and they don't have a choice. And if we're not careful, the Conservatives and Labour will find that their traditional voters, be that the white British Christian, let's call them whatever, working person, it's just not going to bother.
Well, and remember, at the last election, it was thought that 86% of the Muslim vote went to Labour.
Yes.
That's enormous.
Yeah, I mean...
And that's a 4 million,
there are
4 million
some
strong
Labour seats, maybe as many as 50, who are in trouble because of what's happening in Gaza.
Really interesting, isn't it?
Now, Claire, would you ever kiss a Tory?
Well, I think this one's probably better aimed at Nigel. And it's quite an interesting poll that was I saw on the internet this morning about attitudes from Conservative supporters as to if their friend married a Labour supporter. And I think generally the Tories just went, meh.
Yeah, we don't
It
mind.
doesn't matter. We're welcoming. We're welcoming.
Yeah.
You look at the Labour figures, however.
So tribal.
Absolutely tribal, but it didn't stop the end of the bench.
Quite clearly that having married Claire, I'll never get invited to another Labour event again. So if this poll is exactly right. I mean, it never actually occurred to us that at the time, we're going back a few years, I was a Labour Remainer, Claire is a Tory Brexiteer.
Hear, hear.
We've talked about politics endlessly. We do it all the time at home. We've never actually fallen out over it. We've always argued politics through, maybe because we're involved with it so much. But we've never actually had a fallout. I mean, maybe we will at some point in the future, but we haven't yet.
But that makes you quite unusual because we do very much struggle to find left-leaning voices that will come on and have frank, uncensored,
and you are great
robust conversations. Why is it that the political left are so reluctant to sit in the oxygen of publicity and get their point across?
Well, I mean, I think they should. It seems to be ridiculous to turn and say, "Oh, I won't appear there, or I won't go."
We're not the only outlet.
No, that's right.
I've worked for other media outlets where left-leaning voices just won't come on and have the conversation.
Yeah, well, I mean,
they won't make the argument.
Well, the whole point is making the argument. I mean, Jonathan Ashworth, who we just saw, he's very much of the view that if someone like him doesn't make the argument, somebody worse will. So on the basis of that, I don't know why the left is so snooty about it.
I sometimes think it's because the left, and I consider myself to be fairly apolitical. I don't feel the tribal allegiance to either to Conservatives or Labour, particularly not this year. But I do think sometimes the left think with their emotion rather than their facts. You're all about the feels, whereas Claire might be all about the facts. Is there some truth in that?
I think it's more about being certain of your opinion. And I think sometimes with left-leaning voices, they aren't convinced that their argument is right. It will stand up to scrutiny. And they don't want to put it out there.
Yes.
And if you debate it with somebody from the opposite side, like we do frequently, actually it makes you much better at putting your point across.
I've got a mug at home, by the way. It's saying I've never kissed a Tory.
Oh, have you? You got the Labour conference, didn't you?
I did, and it was presented to me by a Labour Party press op and said, I know this is a waste of time, but I want you to have it because I suspect you have kissed a Tory. And I have.
Right,
and it's my favourite mug, actually.
Thank you both for now. We're going to go straight over to the GB Newsroom where Tatiana Sanchez is waiting with your headlines.
Bev, thank you very much. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The NHS could be facing real-term funding cuts of £2 billion as the Chancellor comes under pressure ahead of tomorrow's budget. Analysis by the Institute for Fiscal Studies suggests the health service could suffer a 1.2% cut in day-to-day spending across England, which would be the largest reduction since the 1970s. It could mean the health service is forced to cut staffing or pay despite rising costs and a promise to tackle waiting lists. The warning comes after the King held an in-person pre-budget audience with Jeremy Hunt this morning at Buckingham Palace. The Rwanda bill suffered another series of defeats in the House of Lords last night, in many cases by unusually large margins of more than 100 votes. Peers backed 5 changes to the government's flagship immigration bill, including an assurance that the safety of Rwanda can be challenged in the courts. Nearly 50 amendments were put forward, with more to be voted on today. However, the scale of last night's defeat raises the chances of a drawn-out tussle between the Lords and the Commons. Meanwhile, the Home Office has now confirmed 401 small boat migrants crossed the Channel in 7 small boats yesterday. That's the highest number crossing on a single day this year. The total figure for the year so far is now 2,983, a figure that's higher than at the same time last year. And GB News understands that Kensington Palace was not consulted about an announcement this morning regarding a public appearance by the Princess of Wales. She'd been scheduled to take part in a review of the Trooping Colour, a ceremonial event performed every year on Horse Guards Parade in London on the 8th of June, but it now appears the Princess's attendance is not guaranteed. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts.
For exclusive, limited edition and rare gold coins that are always newsworthy, Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2682 and €1.1689 euros. The price of gold is £1,676.58 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 7,641 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Yeah, exactly. Right, we're gossiping. Emily and Tom. That laughter you can hear, that is Emily Carver, who's here with Tom.
Sorry, Andrew just made me laugh.
I guess you can't tell us what he just said.
No, definitely not.
Do tell us what is on the show this afternoon.
Birmingham City Council, goodness me. Bankrupt council, now they're looking at ways that they can cut down. We want to talk about why they're in this mess, don't we? Because it's, yes, go for it.
There have been a number of lawsuits that have meant that Birmingham City Council has had to pay out over £1 billion, over £1 billion for a city council in back payments and legal fees. Why? Because of provisions of the Equality Act and the Equal Pay Act that meant that cleaners and staff indoors were being paid differently than bin men and refuse collectors outdoors.
Yeah.
And the bin men were majority men, some of them were women. The cleaners indoors were majority women, some of them men. But this legislation means that they had to be paid the same. So then there's so much back pay.
And that's what it comes down to, though. The question, do you think bin men should be paid more than cleaners indoors? And I think, yes, they should, because fewer people want to be a binman.
Well, I don't
think it should even be an equal pay issue.
It's not even that they should be paid more or less or whatever. It's... these are different jobs.
Yeah.
But the legislation that has been passed in both the Equal Pay Act and the Equality Act is this nebulous concept, the same value. And who's to determine this? You get the courts then determining whether or not one job that's completely different from another job is the same value.
Didn't they also take on the Commonwealth Games?
They did. They did.
Yeah,
right, well,
ridiculous. And don't forget, it's a Labour council.
Emily and Tom from midday until 3 o'clock. Right, you, though, are for now with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Don't go anywhere. We've got lots more to come.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Is a debate on gender really a far-right issue?
Far right. I'm so bored of that phrase, you know what I mean? Like, anyone who talks about... anyone who acknowledges that there are two sexes is suddenly far right, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini were all about. This question from Shirley is, of course, about Labour. They've been accused of being undemocratic because they pressured a pub into cancelling a debate, and this debate features Kelly J. Keane, who's been on this show a couple of times, and she's a campaigner, and she was just on the panel, and then they got a letter saying that they couldn't do it because Kelly J. Keane apparently attracts far-right groups. Now, they've tried this trick before, but because some awful, ghastly neo-Nazi types turned up near to an event that she was holding in Australia, they kind of tried to blame that on her and suggest that the two were the same thing. They weren't. That was an opportunistic group turning up to... they're not... neo-Nazis aren't pro-feminist. They're not pro an event called Let Women Speak. That's just ridiculous.
New Zealand's TV blurred her touching her zip because they said that her touching her zip was a far-right dog whistle because she's making that symbol.
Yeah, but she wasn't making the symbol, she was just adjusting a zip.
Yeah, and also, this isn't a far-right symbol.
I mean, that was incredible because she obviously wasn't making that symbol anyway. She was just adjusting a top. But this New Zealand news channel blurred out the hand so that they could pretend that it was some horrible, ghastly...
Yeah.
I mean, this is low stuff, isn't it?
She's talked about having voted Labour in the past. She's so not far right.
But also,
I mean,
even if she were right-wing, which she
Yes.
isn't, why would they be banning a panel where there's a discussion about one of the most important issues of our day? What are Labour playing at here?
They're anti-democratic, aren't they? They're just kind of playing whack-a-mole with things they don't like. I think maybe I'll write to the pub and say I do want to see Kelly J. Keane there.
Yeah, but they won't listen to you
Well,
if
no,
you say
they
that,
won't,
will
they
they? Because
won't.
you've got the unfashionable opinion, Chris.
Well, and the unfashionable workplace.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my new show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m, where real people get to meet those in power and hold them to account. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country in the real world. Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 11:39. Now, ministers are considering banning MPs and councillors from working with the groups behind the Palestinian marches and the likes of Just Stop Oil.
So these are the plans put forward by the government's advisor on political violence, Lord Warney, who says that there should be zero-tolerance approach to those who threaten our democracy. And he joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. So can you just explain why the government feels the definition of extremism needs to be changed?
There's rightly been a focus for the last couple of decades on the counter-terrorism approach to stop violent attacks on our citizens, but it leaves a gap of extremism that may be below the violent threshold, but nevertheless still poses a really significant threat to our communities, undermining tension, striking at our values, and as we've seen recently, being a threat to the liberal democratic process that is a core part of our country and that we need to do more to protect.
But when you talk about liberal values, I mean, the idea that this definition of extremism could encompass anything that undermines British values. Well, first of all, we have to agree on what they are, and that's certainly not something that we can all do.
Sure. Yeah, it's difficult, and that's why probably the framework is taking some time to come out, because it is really important and to try to get this right and to encompass what are our core values and what we mean by undermining it. So this is not a simple thing, but I welcome the way that the government is seeking to do more in this space, as I have been trying to do as the government's put forward ideas as the government's advisor on political violence. And the idea of asking party leaders to say to their MPs and councillors that they should not engage with organisations like the Palestine Solidarity Campaign on its current trajectory, who are clearly set on, or certainly on not reining in the kind of intimidation and anti-Semitism that is occurring on their marches. That actually we should be clear. Go on.
I'm just going to say, but it also includes, it's not just about politics, it's not just about Middle Eastern politics. This could be anything as simple as a man is a man, a woman is a woman. If it becomes unpopular to say that, particularly perhaps under a Labour administration, that could be deemed extremism. Just even uttering that sentence could see you put in prison.
Well, that's exactly what you have to avoid, and that's why I think there is a process going on behind the scenes in government at the moment to try to make sure you can get this right, because freedom of speech is also a key part of this, and the freedom to protest and to be able to express values that may cut against the grain of whatever the progressive consensus is at the moment. And actually, I would say that freedom of speech is a core part of our values in the UK, and it's really important that whatever that we bring forward protects that and doesn't see people effectively being hounded out for expression of views. My concern in my political violence remit has been the way that organisations on the margins have actually. It's not been about often what they've been saying, but it's been the intimidatory tactics that they've been using, the implied threat of force to try to coerce the democratic process. And I think we should be much stronger about saying no to that as a country, while allowing a freedom for people to express a range of views.
What about people like Chris Packham, Lord Warney, who said the other day, the BBC environmental guy, who said that he thinks it's absolutely right that Just Stop Oil should be able to protest outside the home of an MP? Shouldn't the MP be entitled to have some privacy and protection in their home and not have a mob, potentially a baying mob, outside their home?
Yeah, I thought what Chris Packham said was appalling, and I think for anyone to express those views, he is a person with a responsible position as an anchor presenter on the BBC, and it is not acceptable, no matter how strongly you are feeling about something, to take up a protest outside people's private homes, worrying their families, potentially intimidating their children.
But you've just done exactly what I'm worried about. But you've just said exactly what concerns me. That is a different sort of rule.
Really?
Presumably, you can't encompass in this idea of extremism, you can't go and sit outside an MP's house. That can't be wrapped into this, because there might one day be something that you feel strongly about and that you feel strongly about, that you might want to go outside an MP's house and protest about that. If you're doing that peacefully, why is that extremism? And why is that about freedom of speech? That should be about perhaps the perimeter of your house if you want to live in that world.
Well, I mean, I think we're in danger of tripping over different things here. But my point is that you can feel really strongly about something. I feel strongly about climate change. It's right that I think we've declared a climate emergency in this country. But actually, the way to tackle this in a liberal democracy is to get more people on your side to try to vote for the kind of measures that you want. And actually targeting an MP's home, the implicit intimidation that is in that, and the way that their family can be brought up with that is not acceptable. So it's not. I'm not saying it's what people say. It's the way that we say it, and we've actually got to stand up for the kind of democratic society where there is a free and a passionate, a fierce exchange of views, but we do not descend into the kind of implicit threat of force and menace which we've been seeing too often, and which I would absolutely put people's homes.
Surely the law
it should,
accounts for that. We have to be really careful that in the shadow of a Middle Eastern conflict, this government and subsequent governments don't come in and put a massive fist through the civil liberties of British people who have no intention of causing anyone any harm, but need to be able to speak freely without the threat of being arrested for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think in terms of people's homes, the law does already cover it. And that's why I don't think, and I don't think it's acceptable. And I want the police to be enforcing the law. And actually, I think the Prime Minister on this is right to have reminded the police of the powers that they do have to protest outside, to stop these kind of intimidating protests outside people's homes. It's really important that we separate the people's freedom to speak and to be able to put their views out there, but the need to do that in a way that's actually about freedom of speech, not an implicit threat, which I think if you end up demonstrating outside an MP's private home, that is effectively what you're doing, and it's not on.
Well, thank you, Lord Warney. I appreciate the conversation. Come in and we'll talk about it a bit more over maybe a pot of coffee. I'm not sure we scratched the surface. It is a complicated issue.
Sure.
We appreciate your time. It is complicated.
It is.
I can't believe that under a Conservative MP, a Conservative government was seeing ban MPs from marches.
No, he's not saying that.
Look, ban MPs from Palestinian marches.
No, well, I don't think that's going to happen. And the Palestinian marches will continue, but what the Prime Minister is saying is he wants them policed properly.
Right, we've got to go. It's Super Tuesday. But who will US voters pick as their presidential candidates? It's a huge day in America. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Yeah, so describe the contents of the letter for us, because it is quite strongly worded, isn't it? And it suggests that your property is empty. And what do they suggest it's going to be used for?
They say, as part of this process, Northamptonshire Council is identifying empty properties and sites within the area, with the aim of encouraging owners to bring premises back into use or to find alternative options for derelict sites. The resettlement team in Northamptonshire Council supports asylum seekers and refugees across 3 different projects: Homes for Ukraine, Afghan resettlement and asylum dispersal. At present, we are seeing a considerable increase in positive immigration decisions being made in favour of asylum seekers. So basically, they're wanting accommodation. But who goes around and assesses whether these properties are lived in or they are actually empty?
Clearly, Ted, no one had bothered to come and look at your house at all, had they?
What do you want now? Because clearly you are both very shaken by this letter, and that letter that you received in response has not gone far enough. Do you want an apology? What more do you want to see?
Well, she said here that she's, I sincerely apologise, this Lindsay Bellchambers, but I don't see, there was no explanation as to how they've come to say this property was empty, whether it was disused, whether it was unkempt, or what. If you go back through the history of the property, it's not been empty.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Big day in American politics. Greg Swenson is here to tell us all about it. So Trump has basically managed to knock down the main hurdle standing in his way. Tell us what happened, Greg.
Yeah, it's probably the least exciting Super Tuesday we've had in generations, because it's clear that Biden is going to get the nomination for now. And then, of course, Trump is winning virtually every important state, where all the states except Washington, D.C. voted over the weekend, and Nikki Haley managed to win that. But it was 2,000 voters in a very Democratic town. So, so I think the outcome of Super Tuesday is not in doubt, and it's just a matter of when. He can't clinch it officially today, but he'll get enough delegates where it's clear that he's going to
But he's on a high
Canada.
because of the Supreme Court unanimously ruling that the attempt to get him barred from the ballot paper by states like Colorado.
That's right. And, it was a good day for Trump, but it was also a great day for America and for the Constitution. I mean, it was a unanimous decision, and even the liberals on the court understand that this weaponization of the justice system, or Trump's adversaries using lawfare and then using, attempts to keep him off the ballot, or in other words, take the voters, take the options away. Exactly, let the voters decide. But to take away, this kind of the ultimate election interference is taking off the ballot. Interestingly enough, they were sold on Biden, the left and the Democrats in general. And it's unfortunate because they kept his opponents, like the congressman from Minnesota, Dean Phillips. they kept him and Marianne Williamson off the ballots in North Carolina and Florida, the Democratic Party. So they've not only tried to rig the election with Trump, but they also are rigging it within the Democratic Party, and I think they'll regret that because now they're stuck with Biden and it's not looking good.
And who's becoming... And by the time of the election, Craig, I mean, he's slipping up all the time mentally, and his mental agility is at best...
Yeah, the cognitive issues are obvious. He's failing on all the major issues. Of the top 10 issues for Americans, he's trailing Trump on 9 of 10. And the big issues, which are usually the economy, inflation, and the border, he's polling in the low 30s. So this is a disaster for the Democrats.
Can they not insist on a test of his cognitive abilities? Shouldn't you, as he's not just going to be president, he's going to be the commander-in-chief of the military.
But he's just a puppet, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's not in control.
Really is. I mean, they basically put him in the chair in 2020.
Yeah.
You know, he came in 4th in Iowa, 5th in New Hampshire. He was a failed candidate, but they knew that Bernie Sanders, you know, the Jeremy Corbyn of America, was going to get crushed by Trump in the general. So they pushed him aside, put Biden in the chair, and then kept him in the basement, you know, the so-called basement campain where they didn't let him... Yeah, they used COVID as an excuse. But now we know that it wasn't just COVID. It was... He is incapable of campaigning.
And he's got a hopeless vice president.
Totally. And that's why, in many ways, it was impeachment insurance, because nobody on the right wanted to have President Kamala Harris. She's actually polling below Biden, if that's possible. They're both polling at the lowest level for any modern president or vice president. So to compare him to Jimmy Carter, I think, would be an insult to Jimmy Carter.
OK, Greg, thank you.
Good to
what
be
a big
here.
year it is
Thanks,
in
Andrew.
politics. That is it from Britain's Newsroom for today. Tomorrow, Andrew will be here. We'll be in Westminster.
I'll be in the Westminster studio for the budget.
Whitehaven, up in Cumbria for the budget. If you're there, do come and say hello to me, won't you? First, though, here is Tom and Emily. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Media blackout. Is it right that pictures of the Princess of Wales have been published in the United States, but not being touched here in the United Kingdom? Is Princess Catherine OK? And should we be able to see these photographs?
And we'll have an exclusive interview with former Home Secretary Suella Braverman. We'll see what she has to say on the eve of the budget. All of that after your weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. A messy picture today. For many, it's a fine early spring day, but there are a few heavy showers around. Low pressure is drifting away from Northern Ireland. We've got a couple of old weather fronts, though, milling around, one providing quite a lot of cloud across the east and a little bit of showery rain, and some heavy showers possible across the far southeast, particularly through parts of Kent. A bit of showery rain also drifting its way into western parts of Scotland, but a good chunk of Wales, northwest England, southwest England, Northern Ireland having a fine afternoon with some decent spells of sunshine. And in the west, it feels a bit warmer than yesterday, 10, 11, maybe 12 degrees Celsius, where it stays rather glum in the east. 7 or 8 Celsius will still feel pretty chilly, and particularly if you're caught out by one of these heavy showers across the southeast, it'll feel even cooler. They will steadily fade through the evening, but further outbreaks of rain could trickle back across parts of northeast Scotland. For many, it's a dry night, and in the west, where we'll have the highest temperatures today, we'll have the lowest temperatures overnight, and a frost likely through parts of Wales, the West Midlands, and southwest England too. So a chilly start here, but a bright start. Could be some freezing fog patches around. Just be aware of that first thing in the morning. Quite a grey day again across these eastern areas, eastern England, eastern Scotland. A little bit of rain here and there, and a few more showers then come the afternoon over the East Midlands down towards southeast England. Again, best of the sunshine in the west, although some rain could creep into Cornwall later on. Goodbye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We have a ton of top prizes to be won in our spring giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven, and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats, and £12,345 in tax-free cash, Text PRIZE to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 869.